Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy. And this is your home for everything Alberta independence. Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, we go live giving you all the news on and updates on the signatures, the petitions, kind of what's going on in Alberta and how to drive this thing forward. Man, I was a little bit pissed on what happened yesterday. You can go do our two-shot there. I was a little bit angry on what happened yesterday with Pierre Poilievre. I mean, we really lit into him. I was unsure. That was my true and honest opinion. So I said, let's make the video. Let's go with it. We published it. Everybody else went soft on him, or they said this was the greatest interview ever. We're going to go over that in depth today because we did have a little bit of pushback saying that we're liars. We don't have the receipts. We're going to bring the receipts today. We're going to kind of talk about Pierre Poilievre and why Alberta independence is the hope forward, not Poilievre. The more and more I see Pierre Poilievre and Danielle Smith, it seems like they're getting closer and closer to Mark Carney for the good of Canada. It's not good for Canada to align with Mark Carney. Economically, maybe, but ideologically, he's still going to drive that country off an absolute cliff.
And we have been talking about Pierre Poilievre for years now, since he won as leader of the opposition. And we had suggestions all the way back then about going more on social media, taking advantage of social media, talking and taking the mask off. And it's been the same ever since.
Well, he almost looks like controlled opposition. He's always willing to do the thing a day late and a dollar short. And the first video we did on him, that's exactly what I called it. Well, I mean, we have a ton of Poilievre clips, news, and how it's related to Alberta. After that, there's a special message from Keith Wilson. He put out a video that's going to be of utter importance to the petition, what's going on with it, what's going on with Danielle Smith trying to muddy the waters, some hopeful news. So we're going to go through that. It's a 15-minute clip. We're going to stop it, talk about it as we go through. But first, let's get into Poilievre.
Well, hold on. But before we start, thank you for being here. Also, we read all your comments live, so let us know what you think. And also, please subscribe. We're really close to 2,000 subscribers now, so it really does help us out, and it's free if you subscribe.
Yeah, we're 7 subscribers away, so if you're not subscribed, please be one of those 7. Push us over the edge.
Yes. And also, hello to Delorious, who says dance, and hello to Primoris007 that says congrats on hitting 2K subs in advance. I hope it's not. I hope we don't jinx it, but soon.
Well, yeah, I was a little worried. I mean, when we published the Poilievre video, I mean, I didn't hold back on it at all. I even said in the video, we're going to probably lose subscribers for this. There's a lot of reasons independent media won't touch Pierre Poilievre because a lot of their audience is based off his voter base. But you know what I said? I always was a Poilievre supporter. Even when he started turning against Alberta independence, I said if a national election comes up, I'll reluctantly vote for him because it's the best option to keep Alberta independence kind of on pace and on track. That being said, now I think he's completely lost my vote. I'm just going to abstain from voting. I'm obviously never going to vote for Mark Carney or a Liberal. Those policies are just too much for me. But Poilievre and the way he just disregarded Alberta independence, that was his voter base. When he needed a seat, he ran to Alberta. His riding in Alberta is one of the biggest supporting ridings of Alberta independence. And yeah, it's just a day late, a dollar short, and a little bit too much.
And also, as I said in that video as well, we owe no loyalties to anybody. We're 100% independent. Nobody pays us. YouTube sometimes gives us something from the ad revenue, but that's about it. So I am not shy on giving my actual opinion because I don't owe anything to anybody. Except the truth.
And I also think we have such a small subscriber base right now. Smaller channels typically give honest opinions. The larger channels are sometimes audience captured, especially by national conservatives and Pierre Paul.
Or money captured or money loyalty captured.
I will say one more thing. If anybody does have super chats, we prioritize those. We stop the show and we'll read the super chat, but we try to read all comments. So we should be able to. Friday's usually pretty chill.
Yes. And Edward says, I totally agree with you. Voice of reason, thank you. And Troglodyte Hello says Parachute Pierre.
Yeah, and that Pierre video, it hasn't had the most views, but it has had the most interaction, meaning the most comments or the most thumbs up and thumbs down. So it's really generating a reaction amongst people. And I think people are starting to come to the conclusion, you know, like the by-elections are going to give Mark Carney a majority government. What are you going to wait 3 more years for Pierre Poilievre to have an election? The country is going to be in an absolute pit by then. Even Pierre Poilievre's not going to be able to save it. Alberta independence is the way to go. It has an instantaneous change. Hopefully by 2027, Alberta will have broken free of Canada. That being said, if Mark Carney does somehow get rid of the first petition and the first vote that goes through because he says it's unclear, hopefully 2028 is the absolute latest it's going to take for Alberta to break free.
But and for the rest of the Canadians and the milquetoast ones and the full-on conservatives that are rah-rahing Pierre Poilievre and saying that this changes everything, which it doesn't. It just shows his actual intentions. Very similar to a 12-step program. First, you have to realize you have a problem, admit it, and then start working on it. But it seems like a lot of people don't even want to admit that Canada has a problem, at least not on an international stage where it's the most important to admit it.
Yeah, we're going to get into all that. I got a ton of clips. So why don't we get right into it rather than just kind of talking around it, and then we'll talk with some substance to it, I guess.
You want me to do the thing or no?
Yeah, press the Alberta button so everybody knows this is the show about Alberta.
Yes.
He doesn't discuss federal politics. He only concerns himself with Alberta's independence.
Okay, now let's get into it. And it's funny because that intro clip that we play about Alberta says Albertans don't concern themselves with national politics. They just care about independence, unlike him.
Okay, and before we get into this clip, this is the same thing I led the video off with, and I think I was the first to notice it. People have noticed it the next day, but we made a video right away, right after I watched this interview. I mean, I was absolutely heated. And Danielle Smith released a clip of Pierre Poilievre talking about Alberta. The problem was he disregarded independence right in the middle of his speech about Alberta, and she edited that out. We're going to show the edited part first. This is what it was edited out. And then we're going to go into Danielle Smith supercut, where she cut out everything about Alberta independence.
So this is from Mr. Sunshine Baby. Joe asked Pierre Poilievre about Alberta independence, and he gave the answer that I think most people were expecting, but some others are trying to skid by.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's talk about Alberta separating.
That won't happen.
What was that about?
It won't happen.
Play it again.
People.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's talk about Alberta separating.
That won't happen.
What was that about?
It won't happen. Some people are frustrated, but there's some legitimate frustrations. But at the end of the day, Canada's going to be united. And Albertans, I'm born and raised Alberta, and Albertans are seriously patriotic Canadians.
Very patriotic.
Yeah, they're great people, hardworking.
Some of the nicest people you ever
They
run
are
across.
great people in
Hardy.
Alberta. They are hardy people.
It's cold up there.
It
Okay,
is cold.
you can leave it there. And I think he's given a pitch for Alberta independence itself. He says they're the most patriotic. Yeah, they're the most patriotic Albertans that want to put Alberta first, because Canada is not even willing to put itself first on a hemispheric level or on an international level.
And also, I think I was going to say about Pierre. Oh, wow, I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, what else I was going to say is he said they're the most hardworking people. Yeah, we know that because they're propping all of Canada up on their shoulders. And that's the exact same reason if they vote for independence, they're not only going to succeed, they're going to be one of the most profitable democratic countries in the world.
I remember what I was going to say. A lot of people say, well, of course he can't say anything. He's a federal politician. But he could use this opportunity to make a pitch to the rest of Canada and say, hey, all of you have similar issues as well. Let's do something about it. But instead, he's going the Mark Carney way, the elbows up, and the we hate the U.S.
Well, yeah, and we're starting with the independence part of the clip, but there was so many things wrong with this interview. The feelings and vibes were there, but feelings and vibes are for Kamala Harris and a bunch of liberals. I'm focused on the facts. He downplayed every major issue when it came to whether it was opioids or immigration. He just kind of downplayed it like it's not a real problem. And it is a real problem, and a light needs to be shined on that problem. You're supposed to be the opposition. You're sounding like you're starting to align with Mark Carney more and more for the good of Canada. The best thing for Canada is for you to get Mark Carney out of office and to take office, but it doesn't sound like you want to do that anymore.
Similar, Danielle Smith, and this is a clip
Wait, hold
that
on.
you were...
The best thing for Canada is for Alberta to leave, but on a national level, I guess you'd say.
Okay, from Danielle Smith, and yes, this is the video that she conveniently edited out the whole Alberta independence section. Joe Rogan is 100% correct. Alberta is truly an amazing place with some incredibly hardworking people. And again, no lies there. And to my friend Pierre Poilievre's point, Mr. Rogan, consider this your official invitation. They really want him to go to Canada for some reason. And he's smart and he says, no, I don't want to be involved with a country that might arrest me.
Well, again, I'll just reiterate, we just showed the clip where he disregarded Alberta independence. This is that same clip, only it's the before segment and the after segment. And Danielle Smith edited out what Pierre Poilievre said about Alberta independence. I don't think this looks good on her or on him. She should have just not posted a clip.
You should come out to the prairies too. Go to the Calgary Stampede.
I've heard that's awesome.
Oh, it's amazing.
I've been to Edmonton. I've been to Alberta.
Yeah,
yeah.
my
I
home
performed in
province.
Edmonton a few times, and I've hunted in Alberta.
Where?
Well, my friends John and Jen Rivet, they have a guide. I mean, they guide people up in northern Alberta. It's all like black bear hunting.
Yep.
So it's like
There's a lot of great hunting. I don't hunt myself, but there's a ton of great hunting and a lot of hunters in Alberta.
Oh, yeah.
I'm born and
And
raised
pause
in
it.
Alberta, and
Right there, you seen the flash. That was the cut. It was a very deceptive cut. And then he goes into the rest of the things, talking about how Alberta is the greatest country. Let's play a little bit of it. But that part that was cut out was when he disregarded Alberta independence, saying it will never happen.
oh yeah,
I'm born and raised in Alberta, and Albertans are seriously patriotic.
very patriotic.
Yeah, they're great people, hardworking.
Some of the nicest people you ever
They
run
are
across.
great people in
Hardy.
Alberta. They are.
And this just goes on to the rest.
I'm not from Alberta, and I feel like I'm more Albertan than him. He lives in Ottawa, and he's starting to turn into a Laurentian elite. And so is Jason Kinney, and Danielle Smith is aligning more and more and more with Mark Carney as well. This is it's ridiculous, and I think what's going to happen, and the framework they're trying to set up is economics. Then Mark Carney's going to get a majority government. He's going to throw a bunch of economic things like oil pipelines and natural resource contracts at Alberta, and he's going to expect them to get in line. No, this is cultural at its absolute heart, and Alberta independence is going to go forward no matter what you throw at them.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm a little bit heated. I've been heated since I watched this Poilievre thing, and I was almost going to let it slide, and then I was like, it got to the end of the interview, and then he just had to light Alberta independence up.
Just at the end as well.
Yeah.
When
Joe
actually asked him.
I was telling you because I had watched a clip on my phone as I was watching Joe Rogan. I'm like, oh, he does talk about independence.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm waiting for it to come. And at the very end, he talks about Alberta independence. And then right after that, Joe Rogan endorses him and said, I would vote for you for president of Canada.
Prime Minister.
Well, Prime Minister of Canada. The thing is, that moment happened directly after he put the knife in the back of Alberta independence.
And it exemplified here as well from James Duick, quote, Albertans, especially those in the Battle River Crowfoot area, should remember that Pierre Poilievre, though he refused to attack his opponent on foreign soil, because yes, he wouldn't say a bad word about Mark Carney, even though Mark Carney did the exact same thing on national TV in the US, was willing to dismiss the concerns of his own constituents.
And we don't need to play the clip here because it's the exact same clip. Just go back to the top. And yeah, but when he needed a riding, he went to Battle River Crowfoot, and they backed him. And that's one of the areas that's most in support of Alberta independence. He just disregarded every single Albertan that's not only for Alberta independence, but that is for like conservatism in Canada, because conservatives are coming to a conclusion, especially in Alberta, that we're never going to win a national election. So the best opportunity we have is Alberta independence.
Yes. And again, I always say this, but even if he were to win, even if he won a majority, it would take decades to actually see any kind of change or any of the things that he tries to speak about that he wants to do. That will take decades. It won't be immediate. It will take generations to restore Canada or try to make Canada a little bit better even.
Yeah, I'm going to be surprised what happens with the polling numbers, because national conservatives are talking like this is the biggest win ever. This is the best interview he's ever done. And I'll tell you what, I don't think he's going to win any liberal voters over. So I don't think his polling is going to go up with liberals. And as far as conservatives go, hardcore conservatives might be a little pissed off because he played down every single major issue they talked about. And people from Alberta independence, which is a large portion of his base, are going to be very pissed off. I know me personally, I won't vote for him after this. So I think his poll numbers may go slightly down, and I think you're going to see national conservatives talk about, oh, the polling is rigged. I don't think the polling is necessarily rigged
In this
after an
case,
interview
yeah.
like this.
Keith Wilson also says Mr. Poilievre's comments confirm what many Albertans already know. Ottawa is not going to solve the challenges facing our province, which Ottawa created. After decades of being ignored, it's time to be clear. Alberta independence is the only realistic path to reclaim control of our economy, restore opportunity, and secure a prosperous future for the next generation.
Well, and it was good to see this because I was a little bit disheartened right away. This interview raised a lot of red flags for me, but every single content creator in Canada was all on board with this. And I'm like, am I the only one that's seeing this? The thought leaders that aren't content creators were coming out with hard statements like Keith Wilson, like Jeff Rath, like a few others. So
Marty Up North also had a good...
Yeah, Marty Up North was great. And I will say Clyde Do Something said this is what he should have been doing a long time ago. I don't know why he's doing it now. So he gave an honest opinion as well. But I'll tell you, Northern Perspective, God, they had their nose all the way up Pierre Poilievre's arse there.
Arse.
And I'm not saying anything, like, I usually watch Northern Perspective. They're somewhat milquetoast, but I like to watch them. Man, I did not like their take whatsoever.
And it was disappointing takes almost all around. And even people that we had profiled before that are more on the national side. Again, I think they still see a lot or want to see a lot of hope and don't want to open their eyes.
Yeah, a few of the channels we profiled, specifically Juno News, I didn't like one of their posts either. They came out as firm nationalists almost after this. We'll see what happens and if they can continue to give fair coverage to Alberta independence. I might have to make another video talking about them.
Well, let's also remember about Poilievre from Yukon Strong. Poilievre would never mock or dismiss Sikhs, Hindus, Muslims, Chinese, Palestinians, or any group in the way he dismissed Albertans today. There is only one group the Conservative Party will snub, which is Canadians. Again, just mirror images almost.
Absolutely fantastic take. He's not going to disrespect any of these groups because he wants their vote, but Alberta independence, he had an option not to just dismiss them and say, oh, they have relevant things they're relative concerns they're concerned about, and he could have left it there, but instead he completely dismissed it. Said that will never happen. He wouldn't have done that to any other group. Mr. Poilievre, I mean, it's like a slap in the face, and then he tries to compliment Alberta, so he tries to shake your hand right after.
Yeah, it's like, oh, but Albertans are so patriotic and they're so strong and they're so great, and yes, but they have concerns and valid concerns that also affect the rest of Canada in multiple ways, but Albertans especially because of the economic factors too.
Yeah, there was, and I know I'm going to hear the criticism. Well, he's a national politician. What do you expect? I expect if he does it, he can give a non-answer. If that's what he wants to do, a non-answer is better than a slap in the face saying it will never happen.
And again, he could really use the Alberta independence movement to catapult an actual strategy, an actual campaign towards showing what's really going on in Canada and wanting to make that change, but he won't.
Well, he's unwilling to take the gloves off. That's obvious after this interview. He had opportunities with Carney, with Trudeau, with the issues in general. There was issue after issue. He played down the issues rather than take the gloves off and actually talk about the issue and the severity of what's happening to Canada. Yeah.
And again, from Rise of Alberta, quote, Alberta independence was brought up on the biggest podcast in the world, and Pierre Poilievre chose to openly be dismissive of it. Not supportive and not even neutral, just dismissive of a movement backed by the majority of Alberta's conservative voting base. Brilliant move.
Yeah, and what I will say again is it seemed like every single content creator that makes videos on YouTube or on other platforms like Rumble was just absolutely praising this. A few gave criticisms, but even then they give a pre-context of praising them before they kind of knocked them down a level. Mm-hmm. That being said,
it's almost like they're scared.
Yeah. That being said, a lot of people on X that their identities aren't necessarily out there or they're not making videos had great takes. And I think you're going to see the shift and people wake up to what this interview actually was.
Yes, but not so for here, for example, from Mark Nixon. Breaking, polls flip, sudden reversal across the board. No idea what could have caused that. Definitely not the Joe Rogan episode. Flip-flopping like Carney position on Iran.
Well, and this is obviously satire, but if you go down to his first comment, I believe it's him.
Yeah. saying this is obviously comic relief. However, I do look forward to seeing the polls in a week and a half from now. And I think they're going to have a big surprise, all the National Conservative content creators.
Yeah,
people.
I'm gonna be very interested in what happens with these polls, because I definitely think he lost some of the independents vote, people like me. And I think he's going to lose some hardcore conservatives that are going to say, you're really not addressing the issues. It seems like you're aligning more and more with Mark Carney. And I don't think he got anybody from those other voting blocks. So he's really played to his base. The people that already love him are absolutely eating this thing up, but that doesn't help you in the polls. No. So yeah, let's continue.
And again, that was not, it was not just about Alberta independence, also concerning Canada as well. He had some pretty terrible takes that he's already shown anyways, but here Dominion Society of Canada says they come to Canada and they just get along because, yeah, he was praising multiculturalism and immigration in Canada.
Well, one moment. We got a series of clips here, and this is going to kind of show the hypocrisy, I guess.
That's so Canadian. Yeah.
But you know, the great thing about Canada is we've always sorted our shit out peacefully. Like the Protestants and Catholics tore each other's eyeballs out in Europe for like hundreds of years, and then we came to Canada and just got along. And that's the great thing about Canada is like you can come, you know, Muslims and Jews, Hindus and Sikhs. They come to Canada and they just get along. They come to Canada and they just get along.
Grewal was killed. The 45-year-old moved to Canada in 2018. Grewal was outspoken and active on social media with thousands of followers, vocal in her opposition to the Khalistan movement.
They come to Canada and they just get along. They come to Canada and they just get along. They live on the same streets. Eventually, we all start intermarrying, and it's a great thing about Canada.
Yeah, they just get along. Yeah, right. Like every single one of those clips we've actually profiled on this show, so I know they're all from Canada as well. It's not like people are compiling clips and claiming they're from Canada. All those are from Canadian news stories with rival groups not actually getting along.
Yeah, and as it said there at the end, they bring their centuries-old feuds and play them out in Canadian streets.
Well, that's what he...
But it's the continuous gaslighting and lie of, yes, multiculturalism always works, and people don't go into enclaves. They all get along just fine.
Well, and this is the lie he was trying to sell. Canada's doing better than you think. And when they brought up issues, they
not just better than you think. And this is what I continue to say that Canadians always do, even when they don't notice. He was trying to say Canada is doing better than the US. That was the whole play throughout the whole interview. And it's not true.
But they did have good vibes and feelings, so I'm glad he made a friend and they can lift kettlebells together. That being said, when they actually talked about the issues, he downplayed everything. And we're going to get into every clip. I'm going to talk about each issue, what she downplayed, because people are saying there was no issues he downplayed. Yeah, we're going to go step by step. That was just the first one he downplayed. And that was just an outright lie. He started off the interview with a lie as well, I didn't mention, which was when he was asked, well, I wish we would have done this sooner. We gave you an invite. He said, well, I don't leave Canada during an election. No, your ex-girlfriend ran your media campaign on your last electoral run, and there was big mistakes made. You didn't go to U.S. media, and you should have, and now you're doing it when it's a day late and $1 short, and Mark Carney's going to create a majority government through by-elections, so you're not even going to have a shot at this thing.
And similar to the UK, Canada has this historic saying of Canada is a nation of immigrants. And Canada is all about those that built Canada up, etc. But let's see another clip from Dominion Society of Canada. You might not fully agree with this, but asking, is Canada really a nation of immigrants?
Is Canada really a nation of immigrants? Canada's story doesn't begin in 1867. For centuries before Confederation, Europeans came here as settlers and pioneers, not economic migrants. This is an important distinction. Settlers carve homes out of the wilderness, build towns, create institutions. Immigrants, by contrast, arrive in an already built country to take advantage of our wealth and opportunity. By Confederation, most Canadians were born here, descended from those early settlers. Let's look at the numbers. In 1867, Canada's population was about 3.5 million. Over 80% were born here in Canada, descendants of those original settlers. They were not immigrants. At Confederation, 97% of the population were of Anglo, English, Scottish, Irish, or of French descent. Even a century later, in 1971, just before Pierre Trudeau's Multiculturalism Act, Canada was still 96% European origin, about 73% Anglo-French, and the rest mostly other European groups, German, Italian, Ukrainian, Dutch, Polish. Non-white minorities combined made up only about 4% of the population, mostly First Nations people, and immigration was never a popular cause in Canada. Gallup polls and government surveys throughout the 1900s showed most Canadians opposed large-scale immigration, regardless of country of origin. When newcomers were admitted, it was in carefully managed numbers explicitly to protect Canada's ethno-cultural identity. So no, Canada is not, never was, a nation of immigrants. We are a nation of settlers, explorers, and builders, and their descendants. That is our heritage, that is our identity, and it cannot be rewritten. Long live Canada.
Yeah, and I wish.
Wrong way of Alberta.
Well, and I also wish when they allowed immigrants into the country, which Canada is obviously going to need some level of immigration at some point. I mean, I think there should be a moratorium and they should stop it for a couple of years until they can figure out how to do it. They used to do it right.
Yeah.
They no longer do it right, but they shouldn't be giving out massive handouts to people that are claiming refugee status. And
when
that
you have people on your streets as well, like the homelessness crisis in Canada is insane.
Well, and they should hold them to a higher standard. Just like when settlers come, they're expected to contribute to the nation in a big way. Now what's happening, people are coming to the country and they're asking for handouts and for the nation to give them something.
And for the longest time, and still within conservative circles, it seems, because of Poilievre, but not just him, it seems like a third rail issue that now it cannot be touched. You're racist if you say anything, you're xenophobic, etc., etc. But it should be an open conversation and an open debate. Not you cannot talk about this ever because then you'll be labeled X, Y, Z. And the UK has realized that this recently with reform going more and more to the left. Now Restore Britain has come up with asking these same sort of questions. And this is coming from someone that's from Mexico.
Well, Joe Rogan and Pierre Poilievre did talk about immigration. And again, he absolutely played it down. Every day we talk about immigration stories and it's becoming more and more like the UK and more like the EU. They're implementing the same policies. Mark Carney may seem to slow it down this year, but in 2027 and 2028, he's planning to completely ramp it up. He's already passed the legislation to have mass influx of immigrants come into the country based upon lineage from other immigrants that have already immigrated.
And we've already seen the experiment of multiculturalism. We've already seen the results and seen it fail. Maxime Bernier says, quote, Rogan, so you're not opposed to them, fake refugees being there. You're opposed to them getting Canadian welfare. Poilievre says, well, I'm opposed to them if they're not real refugees. They shouldn't be brought in as refugees. I think they have to distinguish between those people who are actually in danger in their home country, which is the definition of the refugee, and someone who just wants to take advantage of it.
This is the part where they talked about immigration, and I really, really think he downplayed immigration. And like, we don't have a real problem in Canada. Yeah, we're gonna fix it. We don't have to use ICE, this and that. Let's see how he kind of framed it. I thought he should have framed it more based on reality rather than how he did.
What do you mean by pretending to be a refugee? How are they doing this?
They're not actually endangered in their home country, so they've come to be declared themselves as students. And then wanting to stay, declaring a refugee status.
Oh, and this is common?
Yeah,
Just
it
a
happens.
loophole?
It happens. And I mean, they just want to have a better life.
Just rewind it there for a second. He goes, is this a problem? Joe Rogan asked right there. That's the opportunity to say, yeah, this is a real problem and dig into the issue. But he goes, yeah, it happens. And
they're just looking for a better future.
That's the vibe he had every time they went into real issues. And I don't mind vibes and feelings when they're talking about MMA and other things, but when they're getting into real issues like this, I really wish he would have went hard in the paint. Donald Trump would have respected that as well, and you could have built relations there.
Refugee status.
Oh, and this is common?
Yeah,
Just
it
a
happens.
loophole?
It happens, and I mean, they just want to have a better life. So I don't begrudge them as people, but we can't spend money on enhanced social services, advanced programs that we as Canadians don't get for people who are not paying into.
So you're not opposed to them being there. You're opposed to them getting Canadian
I'm
welfare.
opposed to them. If they're not real refugees, they shouldn't be brought in as refugees. I think we have to distinguish between those people who are actually in danger in their home country, which is the definition of a refugee, and someone who just wants to come in excess of their proper immigration
Is this
stream.
that common that it's actually affecting our economy?
Right now, it's a challenge because we had a big number of international students and temporary foreign workers that came in very large numbers in like 2 or 3 years. We were bringing in about 1 million people a year, which...
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. No, it's a freaking problem. Everybody knows it's a problem. Donald Trump knows it's a problem. Everybody in the EU knows it's a problem. In Canada, it's a problem as well. Yeah, it's getting played down. And we just showed the clip a moment ago where he says, well, everybody immigrates to Canada and they just get along. And then we showed the actual clips on how they're actually not getting along because you have all these conclaves of different people that just don't get along.
Even Justin Trudeau admitted it was a problem with the students and the temporary foreign workers because they put a pause on it and then they reversed it.
Well, there's no national unifying identity. And he was claiming there wasn't a national unifying identity later in the interview, and people adopt that identity. Canada's gotten rid of that, and they've told you to keep your identity from your original country.
The identity is multiculturalism.
In America's terms, it would be 10 million, like just if you're doing per capita. And it really caused a housing shortage. Like some places where you have 26 of these students living in one basement. So we're trying to unwind that now.
And how do you do that?
Well, when their work permit and their visitor visa runs out, then we have to encourage them to head back lawfully.
Right. But you don't want to do it ICE style.
No, I don't think we need to do that. I just think we have to be orderly and lawful about it.
And is that supported by the Canadian people?
Yes, because we're a very welcoming country. We're a nation of immigrants, but we're also a nation of laws. And there's a general consensus, like across the spectrum in Canada, that
and pause it again. We don't want to do it ICE style. We're a nation of laws. He's trying to it's almost like a compare and contrast of the United States and Canada, that Canada is better. And if he's going down here, which he claimed this was to get rid of the tariffs, as good as the vibes and feelings were on this interview, Donald Trump's watching this, and the way he framed tariffs, we're going to get into that as well. It's going to piss Donald Trump off. The way he framed this, it's going to piss Donald Trump off. The person he didn't want to piss off, he's going to piss off the most.
Population growth was too fast for like 4 or 5 years. And so we're trying to unwind that now.
And again,
just that last comment there from Maxime Bernier saying, Pierre, we're not a nation of immigrants. I'm a descendant of settlers. This country was built by French, English, Irish, and European settlers.
And again, this is one example of many where he played down the issues, acting like it wasn't a real problem. Yes, he talked about the issue, but it's almost like he talked about it like, we're fixing it. It's going to be fine. It's not a real issue. Almost like he's trying to appeal to female voters, I think, because he knows 75% of female voters vote Liberal, and they said they won't vote for Poilievre. So he's looking like, oh, that's my block. The problem is, when he talks like this and he doesn't talk about the severity of the issues, male voters aren't going to like it, especially when you have a demographic like the Alberta independence movement that's really pissed off right now, and we're ready to separate from Canada because of these issues. And now you're playing down these issues and trying to frame everything in the framework of economics. And as long as I fix the economics, Alberta's not going to leave.
And it's important that he says he wants to go fix the tariff relations with Trump, but it's important that Trump and what Trump responds, because again, this is the crux of, will Canada continue to go towards China and the European Union, the failing European Union, or actually continue to build with their neighbor down south and one of the strongest countries on the whole continent, strongest country on the whole continent?
Well, absolutely. And I did talk about it on our video. I don't know if I grabbed a clip, but he talked about tariffs a lot because that was the actual purpose of doing the interview, his stated purpose. But when he framed it as, oh, America shouldn't have tariffs on Canada. We have steel, we have oil. You need these things. You need to take the tariffs down. And he kept saying, you need to take the tariffs down. Needs to take the tariffs down. And he's framing it in the context that only the U.S. is tariffing Canada, not that Canada's been the one tariffing the United States for decades. And this is what Donald Trump is trying to bring up. We need to have fair trade. And what's going to end up happening from this is Trump's going to say, okay, you want no tariffs? You want to work out these individual deals rather than one big deal like Mexico worked out with the United States? Why don't we take down the North America Free Trade Agreement, and then we're going to negotiate on each individual thing, whether it's steel, whether it's lumber, whether it's this. And we only need the things from Western Canada. That's going to hurt Canada massively.
And the USMCA renegotiation is coming up very soon here. That's why he's rushing down to the US, trying to do something about it for Carney. From Juno News, quote, asked about Poilievre's U.S. tour, Minister Dominic LeBlanc emphasized cross-party cooperation on Canada-U.S. trade and the need for a unified Canadian voice. He did not mention Poilievre's appearance on Joe Rogan, which drew over 1 million views.
Well, the narrative going into the Joe Rogan interview, because there was a lot of hype going into it, everybody said liberals are going to lose their minds. And every single content creator said the same thing because they were losing their minds before the interview. Once the interview happened, oh my God, the amount of praise liberals, even on mainstream media, are heaping on Pierre Poilievre is absolutely crazy. There was the odd liberal that didn't heap praise on him, but I was watching entire panels talking about, oh, it was great how he didn't talk down to the prime minister, or how he didn't take the gloves off, and how he's trying to put Canada first. Well, if he puts Canada first by aligning with Mark Carney, that's almost as good as a floor crosser to me.
Well, they're aligning the narrative. It's very clear now.
Pierre Poilievre is in the U.S. this week and says he's trying to support the Prime Minister's work. What do you think of his efforts, and does it support the government's work on Canada-U.S. relations?
So I, as Minister responsible for Canada-U.S. trade, work with all parliamentarians I've had conversations with Conservative colleagues, with New Democrat colleagues, with senators. We're happy to work with all parliamentarians. We work with premiers closely on advancing Canada's economic interests. Mr. Poilievre chose to spend some time in the United States this week. I've just taken note publicly of his travels, and I think that the more Canadians can see us speaking with one unified voice to Americans about the benefit of working collaboratively with the Americans in building an economy that truly benefits all the partners in North America. We have a free trade agreement with Mexico, the United States.
Okay, you can leave it there. And something was done behind the scenes. They're obviously starting to become like a uniparty.
They're consolidating the narrative.
He's no longer the official opposition. It's now the uniparty. He's going down there with an agenda to put Canada first. But I think what they don't realize is this strategy that they have of we want to get the best economic deal for Canada. We're going to keep our tariffs on the U.S., but we're expecting the U.S. to lower their tariffs on Canada. What's going to happen with that is North American free trade agreement's going to be gone, and Trump's going to negotiate each individual thing. And I think what Trump's going to do is if the federal government wants to play hardball, he's going to go directly to Alberta, directly to Saskatchewan, and directly to BC and try to cut deals there. Because all the Americans want is what Western Canada has to offer. They don't really need what the East has to offer right now. And they can manufacture their own stuff.
And with this consolidation of the narrative, they're going after the voter base that they think is the most important, which is female voters, older female voters, which they have propped up themselves to be so. From Table Salt, quote, "This is insane. Female boomers love Justin Trudeau. Now they love Mark Carney, and we all pay the price." Female Canadian boomers back the Liberals over the Conservatives by more than 6-1, 74 versus 12. Why do they hate their grandkids this much?
Well, and when you look at the Pierre Poilievre Joe Rogan interview in this context, he was obviously trying to play for two women. He said, well, I just won't say the severity of the problem and then women will like it more. And they did, according to the polling. The problem is people like me are no longer going to vote for you. And I think these women, although they liked what he had to say, they're not going to vote for him. They're still going to vote Liberal. So he's going to lose some of his base. Well, the people he was playing to aren't going to vote for him anyway.
No. And I mean, I'm not an old female boomer voter, but if I could vote in Canada, because I still can't, I wouldn't vote for him either. Should we read some comments before we continue?
Sorry, I forgot about the comments. We are going to get into Keith Wilson's statement here shortly. It was a 15-minute statement, really ironing some things out, what's going on with Alberta independence. I'm sorry I put so much Poilievre things up front. The interview absolutely infuriated me yesterday. And I wanted to push back on a lot of the comments I was getting in the video as well, because I'm going to stick by my true and honest opinion, and I'm going to give it even if nobody else is.
Mm-hmm. Troglodyte says, love you too, keep going. Thank you so much. And thank you for being here as well and for supporting us. Primoris says, screw Pierre Poilievre. He's a weasel. Realized that when I met him at a campaign event, told him that to his face while shaking his hand. Good. Wish I could do the same.
Oh, absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I can't believe how he just disregarded, Alberta independence will never happen. And then he goes into, they're the most patriotic people. He slapped me across the face and then tried to shake my hand. So it's good to hear somebody else did the exact same move to him.
Owen 5B says, don't forget Pierre is a federal conservative. He has to maintain the United Canada appearance. But I think, he could use the Alberta independence movement as a catapult to actually talk and go hard against what the Liberals have done for the past 10 years. And that, I think, would garner him a lot more votes and sympathy. But he doesn't have the balls.
Well, for me, I support Alberta independence. I've lost all hope in Canada. I've already left Canada. We used to live in BC. We now live in Mexico. I voted for my independence. The fact that there's so many like-minded people in Alberta that are going to say, we're not going to leave individually. We're going to take Alberta. We're all going to go and we're going to take Alberta with us is very heartening for me. That being said, I'm not pissed at Pierre Poilievre necessarily. I am pissed that he disregarded Alberta independence. I think he should have just said, yeah, they have some grievances that need to be addressed. That would have been a good way. But when he addressed the actual issues of national Canada, he didn't go hard in the paint. He didn't take off the gloves. He downplayed everything, almost putting it in this context that Canada is better than the United States. And I cover geopolitics. I cover a lot of US. I cover a lot of Canada, and Canada is in a bad place when it comes to immigration, when it comes to the opioid crisis, when it comes to the other 6 issues they brought up that were political issues on the show. He downplayed every single one. And if you're a milquetoast conservative, I'm guessing it's fine for him to downplay those issues. But for independence people and hardcore conservatives, it's not okay to downplay the issues, especially on an international stage, because censorship laws are coming into Canada. And if the same thing that happens to Canada that happened to the UK, literally people in the UK are making videos pleading to people with political shows like ours to talk about their issues because they'll get arrested if they talk about them now.
Yes. Troglodyte says, has Pierre ever had a real job? And that is also my issue internationally in any context with career politicians, that they're there for their own benefit. That's what always will continue to happen with career politicians, people that just want to do that. The best politicians ever are the ones that don't want to be put in that position in the first place, but will do it for their citizens and their fellow citizens, or because they see a real issue that they want to fix, and then they want to get out as soon as they can. Those are the ones that keep it real, but the ones that want to make a career out of it are clearly there for their own benefit.
Well, and I'm going to say this again. The fact that he didn't go hard in the paint and talk about the real severity of the issues, and he downplayed everything, he's literally becoming more and more and more liberal. Even though economically he has good takes on a lot of things. I'm not going to say he doesn't have good takes, but he's not talking about the severity of the issue. So it's the liberalization of the Conservative Party in Canada. And this happened in the UK as well with Reform UK. They went hard in the paint to get a lot of people to support them, and now they've completely turned their back on a lot of their first principles.
Yes, it's like he's slowly morphing or transitioning into Aaron the Tool.
Yeah,
but even worse, because so many more people have confidence in him.
Well, and this is like, I'm so ashamed of myself. A long time ago when Aaron O'Toole was running, I was so desperate for change that I didn't want a liberal government in, and I absolutely hated Trudeau. So I went out to the poll and I voted for Aaron O'Toole, and he lost. And I was like, what the hell did I vote for? I was like, he was just as much as a liberal as Justin Trudeau. And then I started saying the same thing for Poilievre, and he's becoming more and more liberalized. I'm not going to pull an Aaron O'Toole vote again. I'll never do that again in my life. I'll admit it was a mistake. Yeah.
Primoris007 says, his greatest claim to fame was being a paper boy. Otherwise, no, he doesn't have any other jobs to speak of. Edward says, they should have Jeff Rath on Joe Rogan to highlight all the reasons for independence. I think a good contrast and a good team for Alberta independence would be Jeff Rath, but you need Keith Wilson there too to give the full context.
Well, and I said in my video, as soon as we submit these signatures, which probably around the 7th of April, there needs to be a full court press on American media to put pressure on the federal government in Canada, and we need to try to get Jeff Rath and Keith Wilson onto the Joe Rogan show and have other content creators that are sympathetic to Alberta independence, like Glenn Beck. Keith Wilson has already been on Glenn Beck. We profiled Glenn Beck because he had Keith Wilson on. So my hat's off to you, Mr. Beck.
And because Glenn Beck also talks a lot about the insanity of Canada, both with MAID, but also immigration and also the gender ideology, all the different ideology things. He always puts Canada as an example of we don't want to, as America, we don't want to end up as Canada.
Exactly.
So
there needs
he's
to
been
be
doing it for a long time.
Because a lot of these petitioners and people that are gathering signatures, there's 7,000 people there. We need those people to continue to do something, continue to go out and educate, even if they're not getting signatures, really sending out comments, emails, things like that to independent media in the United States to get people like Keith Wilson on there.
Troglodyte says, LOL, Clyde, do nothing. Well, I mean, at least I think he tries to keep it a little bit more honest and real.
Well, and I'll tell you, I do like Clyde a lot, and I thought he actually did a better job than most of these content creators, because what he said was, and his video he released right after the interview as well, without knowing what the takes were, and he said, this is something Pierre Poilievre should have done a long time ago. It's too little, too late, and it's not going to make a difference. And that take is further than almost every other content creator would go. People were scared to say a bad word about Poilievre. And I was shocked. I'm like, am I living in an alternate reality? Luckily, when I released my video, there was a lot of people that did think the same.
That saw the same. On 5B says he's a national politician, but he also knows the Conservative Party has gone without Alberta. Whose fault is that? It is the fault of the Conservative Party for not doing things.
Alberta's gone now. Mark Carney's about to get a majority government, and he's going to do it through by-elections. There's probably going to be no federal election. That means 3 years to the next election. What are we going to, what as a country and as Albertans, are you saying, I'm going to wait 3 years for Pierre Poilievre, that's a milquetoast conservative that's probably not going to win anyway because the political system is rigged against conservatives? Or are conservatives going to stand up, take off the gloves, say we're done acting like Pierre Poilievre and play nice, and we're voting for independence. We're taking control of our own future. And now is the time.
Even if he won, again, even if he got a majority, to take away all the legislation, all the insanity, all the mind fog as well that most people are under, and the cognitive dissonance, that will take generations. You won't see a change right away. That is also when I fully realized that and admitted that after having tried to start and continue a life in Canada, because I'm from Mexico originally, that's when part of what made us say, this is never going to change, it's never going to happen, and it's both the people, the government, and the rigged system. So it's an impossible situation that now Albertans have an opportunity to escape.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see Danielle Smith, Pierre Poilievre, as well as Jason Kenney and national liberals as well, kind of trying to make this unifying message. Canada's we're all on the same page. We're going to stick together. And they're going to drive Canada off a cliff with their strategy. I can tell you, I've lived half in the United States, half in Canada. I was born in Canada. I covered geopolitics and a ton of U.S. politics because I do like Trump and I know his administration very well. The strategy that they're trying to do is going to backfire. Mexico had the right strategy. It's not too late for Canada to turn around and have the same strategy Mexico has.
And Mexican politicians are even further left and more insane. And luckily, they're not able, well, now they control mostly all of government, but they haven't been able to fully do everything they want yet because the people, we already know all politics is corrupt. So we have no hope in any of the politicians, any of the parties. So people are pretty, not disengaged, but they know their reality that they're living through. So that hasn't allowed them to continue to pass the insane things that people in Canada, for example, have. The lemmings in Canada have.
And I do want to thank Keith Wilson and Jeff Rath. Jeff Rath did an interview about this Joe Rogan interview, and he came out hard in the paint. So did Keith Wilson. When a lot of content creators wouldn't, they did. And there's a lot of content creators now that are in support of Alberta independence, and we're voicing our opinion. We want Keith Wilson to run for president of Alberta if Alberta gets its independence. There's nobody that even comes close to him at this point.
And the most important thing is that he doesn't want to do it. That would tell you that he might be a good one.
And we do have a video analysis coming out where he's clearing up a lot of things about Alberta independence and the ballot. That was supposed to be the primary story. This Pierre Poilievre thing just snowballed for me when I was gathering articles because I was so pissed about it.
And it's not that I fully agree on everything that Keith Wilson says or some of the ideas that he's put forth about the Constitution, for example, or how Alberta as a nation should be formed, but at least he's the most forward and the most engaged and the most knowledgeable about it.
He's the most trustable, and that's what it comes down to.
On 5B says, what I saw in that interview is exactly what I expected, to be honest, though. Yeah, I had no hope for it. I mean, we talked about when he said he was going to go on Joe Rogan, etc. I said, he should have been there a year ago during the campaign. What good is it doing now? None.
Well, he had great vibes and great feelings, and I got sucked into that for the beginning because they didn't talk about the Alberta independence thing to the very, very end.
2 hours in.
And when he said that, it freaking pissed me off. But there were so many vibes and feelings there. I got sucked into it, and I wasn't paying attention to what he was freaking saying. And then I went back over the interview, and I said, what did he say about each of these subjects? It sounds like he's saying there's not a real problem. There's this small problem that we're kind of dealing with as Canadians, and that's not the truth. These are massive issues that are tearing Canada apart at the absolute core, and Albertans know it, even if the rest of Canada has cognitive dissonance of the issues.
Mm-hmm. And Owen 5B says, perhaps he's secretly trying to push independence. I know I'm grasping at straws here, okay? I think a lot of people are still trying to grasp at straws, but I think it is time to take away the fog, the cognitive dissonance, and wake up and smell the independence.
Yeah, and Jeff Rath made a fantastic point on his interview. He said Mark Carney is about to pay off a couple more floor crossers or win in these by-elections. And when he does this dirty politics, it's going to push every conservative in Alberta over the edge. And every single conservative in Alberta is going to end up voting for Alberta independence when Mark Carney gets his majority government. So go ahead, Mark, get your majority government, put Pierre Poilievre in your uniparty and Danielle Smith in your uniparty. We're going to break free of that.
Troglodyte says, Pander Singh Pierre. Yes. And also says, in 1971, Canada was 96% white. And why should that be controversial to say? Is that what I still continue to try to understand? We've seen the multiculturalism experiment fail over and over and over again in all the countries that have tried it and continue to try and push it. Why not have the debate and actual truth about what's happening?
There should be whatever color immigrants are, they should be culturally aligned. Yeah, I mean, the United States was very lucky with the kind of immigrants they got for a long time. A lot of them came from Mexico. Now, not so much. Mexico's economy is coming up, so Mexicans aren't immigrating as much.
And they can't go there.
Other countries are using the Mexican border to immigrate. That being said, there was a moral foundation with Catholicism in Mexico, where when they did immigrate to the United States, it was easy for them to adopt the similar cultural values.
And hold on. We have a few more. I think we can get through them before we start.
We'll do 3 more and then we'll continue on.
Okay. I always try to get all your comments read, but he doesn't let me. Troglodyte says, Pierre wanted direct flights from Amritsar, India, FK Pierre. Yeah, we showed that story too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I kind of brought up that one take where he's not disrespecting the Pakistani community or any other immigrant community, but when it comes to Alberta independence, he just absolutely discards it, says that will never happen. And who backed him up? It was his riding in Battle Crowfoot that gave him his riding, why he's even a politician to this day. Absolutely ridiculous. This was the last straw for me. I understand it's not for everybody. A lot of people are still going to vote reluctantly for Poilievre, and go ahead. I'm just not willing to do it anymore. He's becoming more and more liberalized as he goes on. He's willing to ideologically liberalize the country if he can get some economic policies passed through, and that's not enough for me.
Edward says, I feel like a refugee. I mean, maybe soon you can go to the U.S. as a refugee if this thing doesn't go through. Hopefully it will. But again, the U.S. is opening up opportunities for some tradespeople and some ways for Canadians to immigrate that will integrate well into the U.S.
Yeah, and this issue comes up a lot. And we had already left Canada. We're originally from BC, so we chose our independence.
Well, I'm originally from Mexico. You're from BC.
But I think there should be a push, because we're going to get into some stories later. Massive amounts of people from other provinces like BC, over 40,000 people left BC last year. And every single other province, people are leaving. These people that are leaving, rather than going to the United States, which the majority are going, there's hope in Alberta right now. If they migrate to Alberta for this vote to vote for independence, I think that's a push we need to have and a narrative we need to kind of build, because the federal government very well might try to push a bunch of immigrants into Alberta to corrupt the vote.
But hopefully the good ones, not the insane ones that have ruined their other provinces. Troglodyte says, selling your country. Oh, and selling your country as the best thing in the world when it's not.
Well, and then what? You're going to the federal government. Pierre Poilievre and Danielle Smith are going to the federal government begging for natural resource pipelines and contracts so we can send payments to the master. Like, what are we doing? Well, vote for independence. We'll approve all the contracts we want, and then you'll keep the money within Alberta.
Primors 007, thank you so much, says, hit the like, folks, and subscribe. Let's get Adam Guide to 2,000. Thank you so much. Yes, we're trying to get there. And we have noticed with our other channel.
And we're four subscribers away from 2,000, so that's going to be a big milestone. Yes. If you can push us over the top today, that would be fantastic.
I have also noticed on our other channel that did get a few more subscribers, and we started it earlier. It's at 11,000. Now, each time you kind of cross that threshold of 1,000, your videos start getting pushed out more. So it does help to push the videos out more as well.
Okay, let's go back into some stories. And I think we got
Otherwise, we will never finish.
I think we got a couple more Poilievre stories before we get into the big news, which is Keith Wilson today.
From Rise of Alberta, quote, Alberta's new referendum questions do not kill the legal path to independence. This video breaks down why the independence question still stands, what the Clarity Act actually says, and why only one question really matters. And I think this is what you were talking about.
Yeah, this was the one. So let's click on it if we can. I thought they changed it.
Oh, it used to be like a video?
Yeah, it was normal video before. Okay. But I think, so yeah, we're done with the Pierre Poilievre section. We're going to get into Keith Wilson here. This is a longer video. We're going to stop it throughout and we're going to kind of talk about it. This is some of the most important news coming out from the most knowledgeable person within Alberta independence.
And I know a lot of you don't like it when we play it at 1.25, but it avoids copyright. So
yeah,
that's why we do it.
We play all of our videos at 1.25. Actually, John Bolton said he spent 4 hours creating an analysis of the Joe Rogan Pierre Poilievre interview, and it got copyright struck 11 times for 11 different clips because he didn't play it at 1.25 speed. So
been getting lots of messages from people asking me to comment on what impact, if any, the recent announcement from the government of Alberta about the 9 specific questions that the government's announced will be included in the October 19th province-wide referendum. As you know, the Premier has committed that if Stay Free Alberta exceeds the threshold of 177,000 signatures on the petition, that there will also be an independence question on the fall referendum ballot in October. And we also have the reality that Mr. Lukasik and his team were successful in achieving the threshold to compel a referendum on separation as well. Of course, they framed their question about staying in Canada as opposed to leaving. So we have one trigger already for the government to hold an independence referendum in October, and soon with the work of the thousands of volunteers, I'm optimistic we're going to pass that threshold to have a second trigger being the Stay Free Alberta petition. So let's deal with a couple of issues here that I've been getting a lot of questions about. And again, this is a brand new video. He just released it last night. He's going to go into all the issues that are being brought up about this petition. We talked about it a lot on the show. I was freaked out about a lot of questions being put on that. He seems to not be as concerned, which is great because he's a lawyer. He knows more than I do, and he's been with the Alberta independence movement in the foreground as well as the background. So it's good to hear that he's confident about a lot of these things. Now, the first one is, I respect Professor Party. I've known him for better than a decade, but I completely disagree with his extremely pessimistic interpretation of the events and the situation and the future with respect to the government having decided to have questions on immigration and abolishing the Senate and other things on the ballot on October 19th. And the question that's arisen is, will the presence of those separate other ballot questions compromise the legal pathway for Alberta to become a free and independent country? And my legal answer is no. And let me explain why. When you examine the process that's coming, recently at the Edmonton Premier's annual dinner, the Premier, in response to a question from the audience, confirmed that there will not be one big ballot sheet with lists of questions. There will be a separate ballot for independence, and it will be the first question on the stack of ballots. You know, when you go and vote in a municipal election, you're experienced, you know that you vote for your trustee and you school trustees, and there might be a plebiscite issue on a rec center. You vote for the mayor, you vote for councillors, aldermen, depending. And this was huge news to me, and I didn't know about this. I had not reported on this at all. And we do 3 live shows 3 times a week, and each one's 3 hours. So it is rarely a thing I don't know about. The fact that it's going to be on a separate ballot, that ballot's going to be on top of the stack. One of my big questions was, if all these things were on the same ballot, could you just vote for Alberta independence, turn it in, or would that be invalidate your ballot because you didn't vote on the other questions? Now we know you can just vote on that one ballot that's going to be the first one on the stack, so it's going to be given precedence over every other question on where you are and what they're called, and they're separate ballots. So there will be a separate ballot with one question on it relating to independence. Well, what does the Clarity Act say? The Clarity Act says that the House of Commons has to engage in an assessment on whether or not, and let me read it, in considering the clarity of a referendum question, the House of Commons shall consider, and it goes on to say some other words, which I'll talk about in a minute. The Clarity Act does not say, when considering the clarity of a referendum question, the House of Commons shall assess whether or not there were other questions asked on other topics in assessing
the independence question. That's not what it says. And that's kind of what Professor Party, respectfully in my view, is suggesting.
And
House of Commons is required to...
And he does know Professor Party real good, and I'm glad he kind of gave him some kudos. But I like Professor Party when it comes to first principles. How are we going to form a constitution? But I do think he was very negative when it came to this balloting. I thought there could be some issues. I was not quite as optimistic as Keith Wilson here, but I wasn't as pessimistic as Professor Party. I was kind of in the middle. After hearing Keith Wilson here, I'm a lot more optimistic than I was, though.
Look at the question about independence, not any other question. And the test that it will apply is set out in the Clarity Act as to whether or not that question is clear. Because remember, 1998, the Supreme Court of Canada, in the reference decision relating to Quebec, if they don't enter into good faith negotiations, there's the mechanism for unilateral declaration of independence, which is set out in paragraph 155 of the Supreme Court of Canada decision. So the question becomes, well, is the question that the Alberta will have, and hopefully it will be the question from the Stay Free Alberta petition, is it going to meet the legal test of clarity? Well, what's the question that Stay Free Alberta has? Their question is, do you agree that the province of Alberta should cease to be a part of Canada to become an independent state? Do you agree that the province of Alberta should cease to be part of Canada to become an independent state? Myself and some other lawyers had a little hand in drafting of this question. Guess what the legal test is under the Clarity Act for whether the question is clear? Let me read it. It says, the House of Commons shall consider whether there is a clear expression of the will of the population of a province on, get ready for it, on whether the province should cease to be part of Canada and become an independent state. In other words, the legal question that Stay Free Alberta currently has its petition for on independence referendum encapsulates the exact wording of the legal test of clarity. So I am optimistic that any reasonable observer or adjudicator after the October 19th will have to come to the conclusion, if they're exercising and behaving in good faith, that this is a clear question and it's a clear expression of the majority.
And again, this is why it's great to have an honest lawyer that knows the law, committed to Alberta independence. They phrase the question in a very specific way. Now, I already knew that part. One of the parts that I didn't know, I knew that after Alberta voted for independence, Canada had to go into negotiation with them. What I wasn't clear with was what happens if Canada refuses to go in that negotiation. He says there's already a path laid out in the Canadian Constitution that Alberta would just separate without negotiations at that point. So that was fantastic to hear.
Of a province, that whether the province should cease to be part of Canada to become an independent state. So I am not worried that the goose is cooked, as some have suggested. Would I have rathered that there not be these other questions? Yeah, of course. But is it going to fundamentally compromise the legal pathway to Alberta independence? No, not at all. Not in my view. Now, why do I rather they had not brought these other questions in? And it's, it's the prerogative of the Premier and her government to put as many questions on a referendum as they want. That's they're the elected government. But the reason...
And again, I just want to say that if somebody's coming in the middle of the video, this is a brand new video. They just released that last night that clears up a lot of issues that was coming up with this ballot. So we are going to watch the whole video and pause it periodically.
That I think we have to look carefully at those other questions. And the reason why there's only one question that matters is if each of the other questions about immigration and abolishing the Senate and recognizing provincial jurisdiction, etc., if they all get an overwhelming majority, none of them address the core grievances, the core imbalances. None of them fix Canada. None of them treat Alberta with the respect that we've earned. And what do I mean by that? Well, one of the fundamental problems that bothers me and hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Albertans, is the fiscal imbalance of equalization. That we work extremely hard and we have to send all of this money to these other provinces, to Quebec, to Manitoba, to New Brunswick, to Nova Scotia and PEI. And at the same time, the government that those provinces vote into power in Ottawa, the Liberals, put in deliberate policies to hold us back. And none of those other questions that the provincial government's putting on the October 19th ballots we'll address that fundamental problem. We'll still have equalization. And there's nothing to compel the federal government to agree to a change. Remember, there was a referendum in Alberta under the Kenney government in 2021. Clear majority said, we want to change to equalization. What's happened since? Nothing, because there's no mechanism to compel. There's no leverage. Another thing that bothers me deeply, and I know thousands and hundreds of thousands of Albertans, is the reckless, out-of-control spending that Ottawa continues to engage in, these deficits that are driving up the cost of living, creating inflation, making your hard-earned dollar worth less, making life unaffordable for your kids and your grandkids, and robbing them of their future and putting them into a debt.
Yeah, and he's really making the case here for Alberta independence, because if we have to wait 3 years for another election to possibly elect somebody like a Pierre Poilievre, who knows how much further left he's going to go in those 3 years as well. We have an opportunity this year to vote for independence, hopefully taking place in 2027. We'll play a little bit more of this, and then if you want to see the rest of it, you can go to Keith Wilson. He has his own channel where he puts out very informative videos just like this.
It's called Alberta Independence Can't Be Stopped. Maybe after we finish the live, for everybody watching it after, I'll put it down in the comments.
And just in case there's somebody that's a casual supporter of Alberta independence, Keith Wilson is probably the most important figure in the Alberta independence movement. So following his channel, and his channel didn't have as many subscribers as I thought it deserved.
These other 9 questions from the government of Alberta will do a single thing to address those. The only thing, an action item that will address them, is voting yes for independence on October 19th. Let's look at some more. These referendum questions that the government's put on the table do not change the
And he goes through the other 9 questions and why it's important to vote for Alberta independence, because those questions do absolutely nothing. I think there's a lot of underhanded tricks that can be played with those questions. We'll kind of get into it throughout today's show, because Danielle Smith made a few interesting statements over the last couple of days. Why don't you take some questions? I got to use the restroom real quick.
You just say, I'll be right back. Nobody needs to know where you're going. Glenn Gunn says, welcome to the Friday Night Watchers. Hello, thank you for being here. Troglodyte says, Clyde left Canada, say no more. I mean, we did too, but Clyde is also in BC. Not to just fully defend him outright, but I do understand him. And again, because I am from Mexico, I went to Canada as an immigrant, as a student, studied there, thought I was going to be able to form a life there, take advantage of the great Canada that I was always told and told about. We were able to come to Mexico because I already have roots, and my life here was still here from before I left. But with Clyde, I do understand that if you're in BC or another province, it might seem impossible to look elsewhere and find opportunities that can sustain you and your family. Yeah, at least for now.
Absolutely. I mean, BC had over 40,000 people leave last year alone, and most of those went to the United States. It's a similar thing happening in almost every other province across Canada. Alberta is one of the few provinces where people aren't leaving because they see hope in Alberta independence. And I think we need to give that same hope that Albertans have to the Canadians in the rest of Canada that are thinking about leaving to the States. And if they're conservative and they're willing to vote for independence, they should think about going to Alberta rather than the United States.
Glenn Gunn says, Pierre Poilievre is Canadian, not Albertan. There is a difference. Yeah. And that difference should continue to be talked about.
Well, Pierre Poilievre is constantly saying, I'm a Calgarian, I'm from Calgary, I'm from Alberta. You've lived in frickin' Ottawa for the last 30 years, and the only time you come to Alberta is when you need to win a ride.
When you need something.
And then they backed you.
Edward asks, did I hear a dog bark? Yes, we have a dog. She's a Frenchie. That's why we have all the Frenchie stuff. And that's why there's a Frenchie during the Waitscreen. You can see a Frenchie running around. Glenn Gunn says, so wrong. I'm not sure what, but probably any of the things we've talked about.
Pierre Poilievre, yeah. And again, we did make a video of Pierre Poilievre. I'm pretty proud of that thumbnail. You can go check it out. But there's a reason I went over everything in the opening kind of segment. I wanted to bring up a lot of things that I didn't bring up in that video, which was he was downplaying all the issues in Canada.
And Glenn Gunn says, Pierre is the most Canadian man in the country. You lost me. I will cast my vote to separate. I hope to have a man like Pierre Poilievre to lead us. Do your homework.
Yeah, well, Pierre Poilievre, you're right, is the most Canadian man. He's just not an Albertan man.
So,
and that's the thing. Like, yes, if you want to have hope in Canada, which we don't see any more hope in Canada at all. And especially if now the opposition and the ruling party are also consolidating their strategies.
Alberta will always have its master in Ottawa and in Quebec as long as they don't vote for independence. If they want to break free from their masters, they need to vote for independence. This is a real opportunity to absolutely change the paradigm, not just for Alberta, but to
and not just for Canada, for globally, internationally.
To show and represent how you change the paradigm between elites that are running countries rampant, going a direction the citizens don't want. This will put the control in the hand of the citizens and absolutely change the paradigm. A lot of European countries are watching what's happening in Alberta right now because they want to break free of the European Union.
Mm-hmm. Sean says, you're welcome. Had to use my alt account. Congrats on 2000. Thank you so much. I guess we lost Glenn, but thank you so much for doing that and for all your support as well, Sean. I know you came over probably
from... yeah, that was it. We just reached 2,000 subscribers.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you to everybody. Thank you to Sean. We really do appreciate it.
And I mean, I don't see a point in lying and continuing to try to stay within the narrative that maybe other commentators are having and not giving my true full opinion of the way I see things. If people don't like it, then that's fine.
Pierre Poilievre does not want to take the gloves off. And we've seen that in that interview. That's why he downplayed everything. It's time for Alberta independents to take the gloves off and to go hard at other conservatives in Alberta and say it's going to be 3 years to another election if Mark Carney gets a majority government through these by-elections or paying somebody else off with his crooked politics. Are you going to wait 3 years for Pierre Poilievre to lean more and more left and then run an election where he still might not win? Or do you want change now? Because by the time change may come to Canada, it's going to be far too late. Alberta independence is a guarantee.
But also, it's not new that we've been talking about Pierre in this way for years, as I mentioned, for anybody that just joined. But even when the truckers' convoy was happening and when the trans and kids and mutilating children was happening by the Liberals, he didn't come out with a position or a stance or in support or against what a lot of people and a lot of true conservatives were trying to say he should be talking about until it became convenient for him. It happened during the Freedom Convoy, happened during the trans things. I remember when I was volunteering with Billboard Chris, he was trying to get Pierre Poilievre to speak up about it, and he got completely ignored for years and years until it became convenient for him to talk about it. And then he kind of went into it, and then he voted in favor of it anyways. So it's not new for us that Pierre Poilievre is very flip-floppy and is very milquetoast. However, now it's becoming more clear with the Alberta independence to more and more people.
Yeah, we covered a lot of stories where there was not a lot of hope because Trudeau was in full power and he was overreaching. We did the March Across Canada with James Topp. We did a couple of videos about him. We were really expecting Pierre Poilievre to kind of step up. He didn't step up until months later when the guy was already in Ottawa and it was a safe bet to kind of back him. And then again, you used to work with Billboard Chris, and shockingly, he wouldn't support Billboard Chris for years, and he definitely knew about him.
Yeah. And with James Topp, I mean, we also, again, know that they were trying to reach out to Poilievre or to somebody to speak about it in a more national stage and from a more national federal politician, but they didn't want to touch it. Troglodyte says, Pierre, the most Canadian man, what a joke. I know at Dieppe that Pierre is nothing compared to those men. And I think he wants to posture that way. And a lot of people, again, because they see no hope in Canada, want to have hope in something. So they're grasping at a straw and they're grasping at Pierre Poilievre to say, maybe he's the one, he's the answer. But since he got elected as leader of the opposition, it's been disappointment after disappointment and not listening to both his base, to advice, to the best things to do, etc.
Pierre Poilievre might be the most Canadian man that I know. He's a real metrosexual, modern Canadian man.
And that's what I said in the video too, that like, yes, he is exemplifying Canada perfectly, where you just want to blame the US, don't want to look at the actual problems, and want to downplay it on an international stage because you're afraid that people won't see Canada as the greatest thing ever.
Okay, let's get back into some stories.
To your own detriment. Okay. From Daniel Smith says, quote, even Ottawa's own immigration review is now admitting what Albertans have been saying for years. The system became harder to manage and less functional. Minister Nate Glovish did an excellent deep dive on what that means for Alberta and why this fall's referendum matters.
Yeah, go back to the top. This is BS by Danielle Smith. She does not need to put these on a referendum. She already knows the answer. Hell, the liberals know the answer. And she's trying to build a narrative. Well, I have to put these questions on a ballot so I know if I can do something. If you don't know if you can do something about immigration at this point,
it's that you don't want to do
should
it.
you actually be leader? I like a lot of the things she's doing. So if there's any federal politician, I guess she's the best you're going to get. So leave her in power. But man, she doesn't need a referendum. She should be taking action already. It's obvious, especially in Alberta. Everybody already wants her to do something.
It seems like another excuse. And we give the example of Trump, for example. For years, Biden and the Democrats and even the Republicans were saying, no, but we can't really do anything about the border. We can't do this. We can't do that. Closed within, 4 or 5 days when he took office. And the immigration flow just completely stopped. So it is possible. It's just you don't want to do it because it'll be unpopular, because you'll be called names, because it'll be hard to do in the beginning. You'll lose some support. But then when the effects come in, you might actually gain some support if you had huevos.
Well, and that's the thing. If Poilievre gets in there, because he won't take the gloves off even in a campaign or even when he's trying to get elected, do I actually think he's willing to do the hard work once he gets in there? I'm not so sure. I think Donald Trump put it best. Poilievre is not going to win a national election, and he's going to do it politely. If he wants to win, he has to take the gloves off, and he did the exact opposite of that. Maybe that's one of the reasons that Joe Rogan interview pissed me off so much. I was saying Pierre needs to take the gloves off, and there's glimmers of it here or there. But in that interview, he did exactly the opposite.
And conservative Canadians are so starved for anybody to say anything or do anything about the situation that they're living through that, yes, when he takes half a glove off, a finger glove off, they're like, oh my God, he's based. This is the best thing he's ever done, because nobody else is doing it and nobody else is being allowed to have a stage. I mean, Maxime Bernier, like him or not, he was trying to do that, and he does continue to try to take the gloves off and get in front of the situation instead of behind it once it's popular within the polls. But he got completely shunted and shafted, and nobody pays attention to him anymore, unfortunately, in a way. Not that I like everything he's said or done.
Well, one of the other big things is one of the big based moments he had where he did take the gloves off was that Apple moment. And he downplayed it like, oh, I didn't mean to actually do that. I didn't know they were recording the interview. Like, it wasn't intentional.
And that's the frustrating thing. Like, yes, again, understand that you're trying to put hope in something. Hope is just not there anymore. From Rise of Alberta, quote, Alberta independence doesn't mean isolation from Canada. Alberta would still trade, have agreements, I guess, and relations with Canada. What would end is Ottawa's control over Alberta's future, which clearly cannot be changed unless they become independent. It's been shown that the federal government has no intentions and doesn't want to change that.
Yeah, this clip's not quite as long, but he makes a very good point here. This puts all the control in Alberta's hands, especially when it comes to BC and a lot of other provinces. They're going to be coming to Alberta for oil, and they're not going to be coming for remittance payments, demanding payments to the federal government anymore. They're going to have to sign contracts if they want to survive themselves.
But one of the things that I think people are confused about, just maybe haven't thought about it, which is it's not like after we become independent that we're going to have no relationship with the rest of Canada. We'll enter into a bilateral trade arrangement. We'll enter into bilateral agreements with Canada. But the fundamental difference will be two things. One is Ottawa and their extremist ideological policies will no longer be the controlling factor on our ability to achieve prosperity, develop our resources, and achieve our potential and recognize our true wealth. Remember, we're the third largest reserve of oil and gas in the world. And we're being held back by Prime Minister Carney's continuing obsession with carbon and thinking that we have to decarbonize all of our oil and gas when the world is starving for it and the economies of the world urgently need it. But one of the things that I think people are confused about is maybe
and he's absolutely bang on there. I don't think a lot of people understand how much leverage Alberta is going to have over BC. And I wouldn't say over Saskatchewan, because I think Saskatchewan is ideologically aligned and they want to take the same path as Alberta. So it's going to be very interesting what happens to the neighboring provinces. Alberta having its independence, it's really going to become the leader of Western Canada, even if it's not part of Canada, because it's going to give those other provinces that are surrounding it a direction to lean other than this ideological liberal left that it seems that Carney is having even Danielle Smith and Pierre Poilievre come into his hemisphere, saying we need to stand together. As I push Canada ideologically left, I might give you some crumbs on a pipeline or something else.
And Danielle Smith continues to try to tout this exact same thing. From Juno News, Premier Smith is confident the federal MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, will pave the way for a major pipeline. There's more we need to do to get private industry to invest again, she said. Smith emphasized she does not back creating another nationalized pipeline.
Well, and I almost take like this, like how Poilievre's becoming more and more aligned with Mark Carney. Danielle Smith's doing that with this MOU deal and a lot of other things when she talks about Mark Carney. I mean, she's a nationalist, so she's willing to smile and dance for crumbs. Well, even when you get those crumbs, the federal government's going to be asking for half those crumbs back. It's time to break free from this.
The federal government, Mark Carney, the Prime Minister, you have cultivated a new relationship there. You got an MOU signed. A lot of Albertans were optimistic. You got rid of the 9 bad laws, or most of them, that were stifling growth and development here. Still no pipeline. So a lot of people, rightfully, are skeptical. Is there progress on that front, Premier? And what would you say to those Albertans?
Well, the MOU began by saying, hey, let's have an agreement in principle that we are going to build pipelines again. We are going to develop our oil and gas industry. We are going to be an energy superpower, and we are going to support our friends and allies. And I think that was really important. So if you have that as an agreement, then you have to look at what are the barriers getting in the way. And there were these 9 bad laws. We got most of them addressed in the context of the MOU, but it required us to come together with 5 additional agreements. You saw the first one, which returns decision-making authority over major projects within Alberta to Alberta. That was undoing the Bill C-69, No New Pipelines Act. And so that we were pleased to see some progress on that. We've got 4 more to go, and we have an April 1st target date that we're trying to get that. And I'm working very hard with encouraging my team to work with their team to meet that target, because we want to give certainty to the industry. The world, of course, has changed, as you know. When we started down, when the federal Liberals under Trudeau started down the pathway that they did, I think there was a lack of reality about how much industrial.
And a lot of people don't. We'll continue on with this in a minute. A lot of people don't think she's going to get any pipeline or get any of this. I definitely think she is, especially when Alberta independence gets closer. That's going to be their honeypots to keep Alberta with Canada. It's not about economics. It's about everything else. And there's so much more economics to be gained if Alberta goes its own way. Don't be tricked by this MOU. Oh, I got you a pipeline. It's all about economics. We can stay now. Jeff Rath has more of a pipeline deal and more of a promise from Donald Trump and that administration than Danielle Smith has from the federal government. Why? Because the federal government really, even if they give a pipeline, they don't want to go down that path permanently. Donald Trump is investing in oil and natural gas. Jeff Rath and that team have already talked to Trump, and they said they're very interested in a pipeline if you can break free from Canada. I think that promise is worth more than Mark Carney's promise.
Industrialized economies rely on secure supplies of energy, principally oil and gas. When Russia invaded Ukraine, that was certainly a wake-up call to Europe. And now that we've seen the hostilities turn into open war in Iran and blockading of the Strait of Hormuz, I think everybody else is beginning to realize just how much the world economy relies on this. And Canada is emerging again and again and again as the preferred supplier of this vitally important fuel. For us, getting a pipeline to the Northwest BC coast allows us to assist our Asian.
It's actually not the preferred supplier, and that's the thing. It's preferred because it's not in a war zone, but they put carbon taxes on their own oil. So you're having to pay a premium. You're having to pay more than if you buy from the United States or anybody else. Japan just signed over a $50 billion deal with the United States for oil. If Canada was the premium supplier, they would have been going to Canada. They tried to. Canada rejected them, and they have no way to actually export that oil to a West Coast pipeline.
Asian partners, friends, and allies, and ensuring that they have a diversified stream of oil. And I'm encouraging the New Brunswick, Newfoundland, Labrador, Nova Scotia, and even Quebec to develop their own substantial oil and gas resources so that they can be a secure supplier, not only for themselves, but also to Europe. So the conversation has changed completely. And there's just a few more things that we need to do to get the investment climate to a level where the private industry.
Yeah, and I do agree. The conversation has changed completely, but it's just still a conversation. It's a bunch of words. And that's why I like Donald Trump. Even though I disagree with certain things that he does, man, he takes action. Within 1 year of taking control of the United States for the second time, his first term, he was learning. But 1 year into his second term, the United States is outpacing China for the first time in decades. Their GDP is higher than China. China's on the decline. The United States is on the rise. So, it's because he took action. And this is something Carney's not doing. He's running around the world having words and meetings with everybody. And he's talking about, oh, I have this natural resource deal and this natural resource deal. All that's hung over from the Trudeau administration. And he's just trying to reclaim it as his own victory.
And it's the paradigm of the two different ways that are emerging now, also with the multipolar world that we're seeing, of the way things used to work, the way globalist elites, and then yes, we have words, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and we're going to cooperate with certain ones, but not other ones, or just ramming through things and actually doing things with this, which is a paradigm of that we're seeing now within this continent, and Canada doesn't want to be a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why it keeps getting uninvited from things like the Shield of the Americas, because they've allowed too many people in that now are too dangerous for the rest of the continent.
Okay, let's get into the next article we got here.
We're going to profile John, Alberta Patriot, on Sunday, I believe it comes out. And he continues to this is one interview, I believe, but we've played different segments of it now.
Sunday or tomorrow? Oh, yeah, tomorrow we're releasing a video on May tomorrow.
Yeah.
We're going to profile John, who is talking to Albertans. That's his YouTube station.
Channel.
So absolutely fantastic Alberta Patriot here.
Yes. Quote, she said, many reserves still have their water trucked in, even when they're right next to towns with full water systems. And this is the same lady that he's been interviewing and releasing these segments over and over again. She's First Nations.
And pay attention to this interview because we have a secondary clip where we're going to play with this. They go together. So it's important what she's saying here to get the context for the next video.
When they're talking about running water on the reserves, right now, every reserve in Canada gets their water trucked in. So every reserve in Canada. So the reserve that I'm from is literally, and a lot of reserves are so close to the towns. Like it's literally a road in between them.
Wouldn't it be awesome if I think, you know what, I think we could say this. And I'm going to start saying this in more of my videos. Let's make a promise that if we win independence, we're going to just immediately start a massive water infrastructure project and build water infrastructure on all the reserves. Like it'll be like the first year, we're just going to do it.
And pause it? Yeah, it's fantastic, and I love that idea, and I love John's enthusiasm. The issue is the elites in these tribes are getting billions of dollars from the Canadian government. Why haven't they done this? This is what needs to be questioned, and I think that's what she's trying to question here. They have billions of dollars. They have the money to build the water infrastructure, even if they have to pay the town next door in order to tap into their water resources, because there's more than enough water to go around. So I like the idea he has, but it should be fixed by the elites within these tribes already. The money's already there.
Like, why can't we do that? Surely with the $40 billion, we're going to,
Absolutely. I'm for that.
And it's like no strings attached. This is just because you're people and you get water.
That's right. I think everybody in Alberta should have that opportunity in a free and independent Alberta when they're talking about running water.
And in fact, I like her. I like her too, and I like that little statement she gave at the end.
In a free and independent Alberta, everybody should get water.
And she has been blowing the whistle on the elites in the tribe. That's very hard to do for tribal members. There is a lot of heat that gets put back on them and a lot of threats. So good on her. My hat's off to her.
Yes. Speaking of, now let's see what Pierre Poilievre said on Joe Rogan about the First Nations from Kirk Lubimov. Quote, First Nations in our country are incredibly forward-looking when asked about it.
First Nations are extremely corrupt when it comes to building things like this. They'll do it because the elites want to line their own pockets. But when it came to their own people and giving them water, we just watched the video. They're not willing to do it because there's nothing in it for them.
The First Nations in our country are incredibly forward-looking. The Squamish built 6,000 units of housing on 10 acres of land. You can believe it. In a town in a city of Vancouver where it's very hard to get a permit to do anything because it was their land, so they did it. They're building now an LNG liquefaction plant where they replaced an old 30 mill. They cleaned it up and put an LNG plant there. But the federal government took a lot of time.
And if you think those 6,000 houses are all for tribal members, you're sadly mistaken. They're selling a lot of those houses, 99-year leases. You don't even own the property. You rent it for 99 years. And that's the same model the federal government is trying to move everybody in BC into.
14 years to give them a permit. So we need to think like they're thinking, which is entrepreneurial, speed of business, get it done quickly. The First Nations in our country are incredible.
Well, the only thing he's noticing is that the red tape and bureaucracy that the federal government and provincial governments impose upon things like building is what's stopping a lot of the actual forward thinking that Canada could be doing, that Alberta will hopefully soon be doing by itself, that the First Nations don't have because they're doing it on their own land.
Everything you said is absolutely true there about we need to take down red tape. We need to start giving out permits. But you're going to wait 3 years for Poilievre to win an election? No, Alberta can do it this year, vote for independence, go into negotiations, be free by 2027, and have no red tape and start doing this themselves. They can actually take all Poilievre's good ideas and implement them, and they can leave the bad ones.
And it'll be a very stark contrast that can now be used instead of using the US. You can use Alberta versus Canada and see who's doing the best in a year, I would say, even. That would be noticeable. Matt Alexander says, quote, remember when Mexican drug cartels operated from Canadian First Nation reserves? They're operating trafficking hubs without police interference. They exploit treaty rights and jurisdictional complexities. Another proud moment in recent Canadian history. Keep acknowledging your nation away, Canada. And it says, quote, yes, there are credible reports of Mexican drug cartels and affiliated networks infiltrating and operating on specific First Nations reserves in Canada, particularly exploiting jurisdictional complexities, blah, 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 blah.
Well, and this happens a lot on the East Coast. I've known about this for a long time. There's just never been a real good time to kind of bring it up. But now with what's happening in Mexico, we're living here, people are starting to take notice. And they're saying organized crimes in Canada. And a lot of people are saying, how are they operating so openly in Canada? It's because there's a secondary government of the First Nations that the government just doesn't have the same control on that land.
But also in the West Coast, and I've been talking about this in Canada, in Vancouver for the longest time too. Oh, sorry, this is what I wanted. From Jeff Rath, quote, breaking, Wings of Freedom called, Alberta independence supporters not welcome, let's all go somewhere else.
Yeah, and I was leave it on here for a moment. I was talking about a lot of businesses don't support Alberta independence. And if they don't support Alberta independence, I can understand that. But when you're going to bring a lot of people in there, let's just take note of the business and not go into that business. Give businesses that support Alberta independence your business when you go in there as a regular patron.
Mm-hmm.
That was it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, can I move now?
And this was a big thing about a lot of businesses not wanting people having petitions outside of their businesses or going in. So when a business is willing to support Alberta independence and have petitioners in there or out front of their business, it's good to kind of profile them and let people know that this is a good place to spend your money.
And also from Alberta Radio, quote, members of the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, which should just be called the Hate Network, today woke up to their X accounts being suspended and permanently removed.
And pause it. Oh, sorry. We're going to read the rest of this, but we talked about this specific thing. We brought the guy's image up. Go down a little bit. I think his image might be there. No. Okay. There he is. So that's the guy. He's a known Marxist, and they put him in charge of the anti-hate. And they put him in charge of the anti-hate network to do online censorship, especially with these online censorship bills coming into effect. You're going to see more organizations being funded by the federal government like this. So it's good to see American companies like X fighting back. They're aware of Alberta independence. They're aware of what's going on here, and they're going to try to help out Canadians as much as possible when it does come to free speech.
It says Canadian hate members, X accounts permanently removed. Members of the Canadian Anti-Hate Network today woke up to their X accounts being suspended and permanently removed. This is in wake of Canadians submitting mass reporting complaints to X support after it was shown that Tony Weiss et al. Targeted individuals with online harassment and doxing. There's a concerted effort now to have X remove the network. Rachel Gilmore and allies form the platform.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting because all these people that got banned off of X are directly supported by the federal government. So they're waking up in the morning. They never expect this to happen to them. So it's good to see X kind of did Alberta independence a favor there. Okay, you can go into some questions.
Comments,
questions.
Troglodyte says, Poilievre so soft. Yes. And says, Alberta could strangle trade from Asia too, as well. Bill Goat says, Joe Rogan would be a real Canadian man if he would come back here. There's lots of real Canadian men in Alberta. Most are ranchers or farmers, miners, loggers, etc. And exactly, and the ones that want to stand up for their freedoms and that of their children, grandchildren, etc. And that are willing to do something instead of just pandering to either their base like Pierre Poilievre or to the rest of Canadians that don't agree with them, but now they're too scared to say something. Troglodyte says Smith wanted 5 million more immigrants. Yeah.
Well, I think what's going to happen when Alberta gets... Ooh, when Alberta gets its independence is all the real Canadian men are going to move to Alberta because they see the direction Canada's going. They just don't understand how to fix it.
Mm-hmm. Bill Goatee also continues, big rig drivers, tradesmen, linesmen, men.
Yeah. The people that build a nation, not your bankers, not the people that are funneling money around and printing more money and not building real things. Building a real country is about the people of that country, building real things in that country, having a real economy, real resources, real manufacturing, not what Mark Carney is doing with carbon credits, carbon taxes, more tax, more tax, more tax. That's the only way to run their government. Donald Trump wants to get rid of all tax. Ron DeSantis down in Florida wants to get rid of all property tax. All these ideas are being floated in Alberta independence as well. They don't want the model Mark Carney has because there is no future with that model.
Mistletoe asks, guys, what if Smith is calling their bluff? What if the other referendum questions are not for her to consider if they're possible? What if the point is for Albertans to consider if they're possible?
I don't think so. Not at all. But I mean, we'll go forward with it. And I'm glad Keith Wilson is hopeful, and I'm glad he put that video out. And I was glad to hear the Alberta independence question is going to be the first one on the stack, and it's going to have its own little ballot. Mm-hmm. So
Troglodyte says, LOL, anti-hate getting well, anti-hate getting hate. That's what they'll call it. It's just common sense, in my opinion, to remove them. Sean says, guy may not like Poilievre, but he eats a mean apple. Well,
yeah, but he's not going to eat a mean apple again because he was apologizing about that almost as, oh, I didn't even know I was doing that, blah, blah, blah.
I'm sorry.
He was trying to play down his masculinity as much every opportunity he had in that interview.
Mm-hmm. And that's how he'll govern. KP for you, hello, says, excellent show this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
And also says, same with the convoy. Pierre Poilievre has to have his team analyze everything for weeks before they tell him okay.
Yeah,
and he doesn't want to stand up for the things that his constituents care about.
Yeah, and I brought it up before. Justin Trudeau used to spend millions of dollars a week on polls to figure out what was the right position. And if it wasn't the right position, he wouldn't say anything. Mm-hmm. Then he would have mainstream media go after that issue until the polling was favorable, and then he would come out with his stance. Pierre Poilievre doesn't have the mainstream media, but he won't come out on an issue until the polling is favorable on that particular issue. He rarely takes a hardline issue that's not popular.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, I mean, I'm remembering back to some of the videos he used to do where he would go to Vancouver and talk about the drug crisis or go to or the housing crisis. And he was talking about the issues, and now he seems to have completely forgotten about them, even though he's spoken about it.
He's still making videos on that. Like all last week he was doing that.
But then why doesn't he do that on a national stage?
He does.
With Joe. Why doesn't he admit what he's admitting on those videos?
Now that you brought that up.
Like he's not admitting what he talks about in the videos he himself releases.
Well, over the last 3 months.
Late, though, but he releases
Over the last 3 months, he's been going over to England and all these places talking about the issues, the severity of these issues, and relating them to Canada. And he's been talking about them, but as soon as he has the national stage on Joe Rogan, he downplayed everything. So you're right. I didn't even freaking think about that for a minute.
Hold on. Oh, no. Sorry. Sean says, why does Canada require certain elected officials to speak both British English and really bad French? Because that's the rules. That's one of the deals that Quebec got when they wanted to, that was used to pander to Quebec.
Yeah, they want to bring in more foreign languages as well, which is just crazy.
Officialize them?
Yeah, officialize them. We covered that story. It's not official yet, but...
On 5B says, planning to have our business fully moved to from Ontario to Alberta by September 2026.
Fantastic to hear that. Absolutely amazing. I mean, I'm confident in Alberta independence, but if Mark Carney does something crazy because he gets a majority government and stops it, Alberta is still the best province within Canada to have a business.
Mm-hmm. And Troglodyte says, Pierre Poilievre shucked his image when he was called Millhouse. Now he talks kettlebells, and he goes and gives a kettlebell to Joe.
Somebody gave a great comment in our Pierre Poilievre video, and what did they say? They said, can we finally admit, oh God, what was it?
I don't know. I didn't read it.
No. Oh, can we finally admit Millhouse isn't a conservative? Yeah, and I was laughing at that.
But he also, after the interview, and I also said it in the video we released, he looked like the kid, when he was talking to Joe and afterwards, when he was asked about it, he looked like the kid that got to spend time with the popular kid. Like, he was all happy and elated, and yeah, we talked, and then we talked about this. He didn't look like the leader of the opposition of a country.
Well, I thought the vibes and feelings were fine during the interview. I had a lot of issues with the interview itself, but on the video we did about the interview, we showed Pierre Poilievre's own analysis of the interview on the streets in the United States, and he did look like a happy kid in that particular thing, and it was just like
embarrassing, I would say.
Yeah.
Edward says, that weird Marxist guy has a stupid elbows up shirt on. I thought it was a meme, not the actual guy. No, that's him.
That's the actual guy. Yeah.
That's him.
Okay, let's go back into some stories.
One
here.
more. KP4U says he never takes a stance until it's all calculated out for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what good does that do?
And he's aligning so much with Mark Carney right now. He's going to come out extremely hard line against Alberta independence. So everybody that's pushing back on me right now, saying I'm being too hard on Poilievre, you just wait. Him and Mark Carney are slowly becoming connected to the hip because we're putting Canada first. And what does that mean? Putting Alberta last.
Mm-hmm. From Sean Amato, quote, Alberta's premier says too many Canadians are accessing medical assistance and dying, so she's bringing in new provincial restrictions. As Sean Amato reports, Danielle Smith is also willing to invoke the notwithstanding clause to protect the bill.
Yeah, I'm not sure about invoking the notwithstanding clause. I don't like when any politician does this, but we did make a video that's coming out tomorrow about the MAID program, specifically in Alberta, and she is really pushing back, and it's fantastic. I do give Danielle Smith a hard time at times. That being said, when she does something good, I'm more than willing to praise her for it. And although she's not getting rid of the MAID program, which I would prefer, she's trying to push it back to its original form. And once it's there, she might be able to push it out of existence.
It's not a video.
Oh, it's not a video. Okay.
But yes, I mean, and again, we are willing to acknowledge when politicians or people or commentators do or say something positive, even if we might, like other things they do.
Yeah.
And I think that discernment is also important for everybody to have.
And like I said, the vibes and feelings in the Poilievre interview was there. They did have a camaraderie, and a lot of people didn't see past that to the substance. Mm-hmm. I'm a conservative, so I typically want to know what the substance of the argument was. And when I was listening into it, he was downplaying it, and it wasn't for me.
Mm-hmm. And let's look at what Jeff Rath says. Quote, Albertans, don't let Pierre Poilievre's performative BS on Joe Rogan suck you in. He refuses to renounce equalization and the 10-to-1 imbalance between Quebec and Alberta dairy licenses. Pierre is not coming to save you. Alberta independence is the only way forward. And there he is, very happy with his kettlebell.
Yeah, I mean, he should be talking about these issues.
And he said, Pierre Poilievre said, fought for Canadian workers and Canadian interests on the world's biggest podcast. Downplayed the interests and Canadian
You disregarded the hardest working Canadians there are, and that's Albertans. Those are the ones propping up the entire country. You didn't fight for them. You disregarded them.
You ignored them and said, oh, no, it's never going to happen.
Okay. We talked enough about Poilievre. Yes. Some of the articles slipped down there, so they weren't all together.
Juno News says, quote, a report says new pipelines moving 1.5 million barrels per day could add 30 billion to the GDP and 110,000 jobs. Premier Smith notes past projects like Keystone XL, Energy East, and Northern Gateway could have generated 55 billion.
And again, I think Alberta's economy would be 10 times bigger than it is because they could just approve 10 times as many projects, and they have enough natural resources for that. The biggest limiting factor for Alberta once they get their independence isn't how much natural resources they have or how many contracts they can approve. It's actually going to be their population size and making sure they can manage that appropriately.
Premier, a new report came out today from Studio Energy and ATB Economics, and it indicated that new pipelines that would see an additional 1.5 million barrels a day moving oil out of Western Canada would have some pretty significant economic benefits, more than $30 billion of GDP over the next decade and 110,000 jobs. How does this compare with the analysis that your government has done, and how do you think that this should, impact how these projects should be viewed by the federal government.
Well, that's pretty close to what I would have expected. The numbers I often use is that if we had built Keystone XL and Energy East and Northern Gateway, we'd have 2.5 million barrels per day of additional production today, which would be generating about $55 billion worth of additional GDP, of which about 40% goes to various levels of government. So for them to conclude that this pipeline might generate as much as 31 billion seems to wash with actually a fairly conservative estimate on what prices would be. And I think it's something that our federal government should be mindful of too, because they generate revenue from the corporate income taxes, the personal income taxes, and various other fees and taxes that they charge. And then
and a lot of people do wonder why Mark Carney just isn't investing in Alberta and taking down the regulations, because there's massive money there for the federal government. The reason is he was the global architect behind the scenes of what was supposed to be the new green economy. A lot of it was based upon going away from oil, going towards carbon credits, carbon collection, green energy, all these things. And he's invested everything he has into that new architecture. And there's still other countries that are on board. He thinks if he can wait Trump out, they can go back into it. But if he starts giving Alberta what they want and going towards oil and natural gas, it's his friends that have invested in that with him are going to start losing confidence in his architecture.
And his Brookfield Asset Management, which is also pretty involved in that, but also it's also involved in oil. So Riley Donovan says, and this is another Poilievre one. Poilievre talks about Canada's immigration policy with Joe Rogan, saying we're bringing in about 1 million people a year, which in America's terms would be 10 million. Caused the housing shortage. Blah, blah, blah.
What do you mean by pretending to be a refugee? How are they doing this?
They're not actually endangered in their home country. So they've come to
you
be
can pause it.
themselves.
We played this one. I doubled the clip up by accident there. Yeah.
Because you were gathering them pretty quickly today.
Well, yeah, I was a little bit frantically trying to gather enough stories there.
Hold on. And now I'm missing one.
Oh, that's okay. Just go to the next one if you got it.
Okay. Quote Cat Canada says, reporter Steve Paikin says Poilievre going on Joe Rogan's podcast doesn't reach female voters and props up bro culture. No, we think the opposite, actually.
Well, no, I actually think he's not going to reach female voters here. I actually agreed a little bit with mainstream media here. Overall, mainstream media came out hard on Pierre Poilievre's side and absolutely loved everything he said. This particular take was the one that I seen that they weren't on his side.
Doing the Joe Rogan show, the Joe Rogan experience, excuse me, which is what it's called, I'm not sure how that broadens the base. I suspect that just reinforces the whole bro culture thing that he has been accused of. How does doing the Joe Rogan experience help him with female voters, for example?
Yeah, attract new ones.
I don't see it yet, but okay. Doing the Joe Rogan show.
And I think female voters did like what they seen on there. They're just not going to vote for him. They're already firmly in Carney's camp, and he's losing his male voter base, especially because his male voter base right now will easily kind of turn against them because Alberta independence. We want you to talk about the issues. And when you talk about the issues, talk about the severity of them. When you don't, it doesn't lend confidence to the future of Canada or the direction you want to take it.
The severity and the solutions and what direction they would lead to.
Yeah.
But from the United Conservative Party of Alberta, quote, Smith says this deal slams the door shut on the vast majority of the 9 bad laws that were left over from the Trudeau era. Laws that killed jobs, drove away investment, and suffocated Canada's economic productivity. Oil and gas.
You can just play the video here.
And of course, late last year, we also signed a landmark energy agreement with Ottawa that will pave the way for a new West Coast pipeline. And I want to stop here just for a moment because the commitments in this agreement are significant. They slammed the door shut on the vast majority of the 9 bad laws that were left over from the Trudeau era. Laws that killed jobs, drove away investment, and suffocated Canada's economic productivity. The oil and gas emissions cap, gone. The net zero power regulations, gone. The greenwashing provisions, gone. The consumer carbon tax, gone. Export tax threats, gone. EV mandate, gone. The tanker ban, adjusted for a new West Coast pipeline. But how about this? The agreement also led to the resignation of Stephen Guilbeault from the federal cabinet.
And all that is absolutely fantastic. But what I'm also, what I'm hearing, which a lot of people may not be hearing, is, oh, I'm getting closer and closer and closer and aligning with Mark Carney. He's giving us these economic benefits, and I'm willing to align with him on cultural benefits, because that's the direction he's going to continue to take Canada. Economics does not fix the situation, although I am glad she's doing the best for Alberta in case Alberta independence doesn't work out. There's some kind of safety net there.
And we see this from Alberta Proud Dad saying, quote, attended the leaders' dinner in Edmonton last night and heard Danielle Smith speak. Strong focus on Alberta's future, economy, and resources. Leadership like this gets people talking. Where do you rank her among Alberta premiers?
Oh, and that clip we just watched was from that actual dinner. So that's why I put the two clips together here.
Good morning from Edmonton. You know, last night, I almost rolled an ankle there. Last night I got to watch the Premier speak at the Edmonton Leaders Dinner. And I'll tell you one thing. Her and I don't agree on everything, and that is perfectly okay. You know, here's the thing. It's called being an adult. So a couple things I don't agree with Danielle Smith on. I think Canada's over. I think Canada's finished. I do like that she's advocating for Alberta at every single level of government, and I appreciate her for that. Second, Care First insurance, no fault insurance coming to Alberta. Absolutely do not agree with it. So why do I go into events like that? Because everybody says, oh, you just make videos on the internet. No, I go and I talk with people in the crowd, whether they're ministers, MLAs, about things like Care First insurance and how we have to change it. Now, is little old me going to be able to make a difference? I have to believe that I can with the help of all of you. Danielle Smith did an amazing speech last night. And you know what? She is the best premier in this country.
Okay. And what I'll say about that, yeah, a lot of people that are with the Alberta independence movement won't go to dinners like that. Or if it comes to the conservative convention that happened recently, and they weren't allowed in. So that's on the conservative convention, which is a big gripe of mine. But we should be going to events like that when we are welcome, so we can kind of network and let people know what Alberta independence wants.
And to be able to have the discernment, and I think he raised an important point there, the discernment where you might not agree with everything, but you can also highlight positive things and the negative things without saying, oh, I hate this person or I love this person.
Well, and a lot of people that are there can be brought over to Alberta independence. Not everybody's a politician in that room. There's a lot of business leaders there as well. And if Alberta gets its independence, a lot of business people are going to want to do business in Alberta.
And Danielle Smith could still have some sort of involvement within Alberta politics if it becomes independent.
Well, this is the thing. If the Alberta,
but I don't know if she'll want to.
If the Alberta independence vote is so dramatically one-sided on the side of Alberta independence, I think you're going to see a distinct shift in Danielle Smith, and I think she's leaving that path open. Yes, she's a national politician, but if she realizes Alberta independence has a massive support, I think you're going to see her get behind it to a certain degree. Yeah. Right now, she's not behind it at all. I'm really skeptical if she's trying to undermine it or not.
What she's trying to do.
Yeah, but she wants to wait to see what happens with that vote.
And in her case, I think it is kind of smart at this point.
Yeah.
Jeff Rath says, a Brazilian company is flooding Alberta with foreign workers. Danielle Smith doesn't need a referendum to stop this. She needs to stop talking about it and do her job.
Yeah, we can go right to the next article because they are connected, because he's talking about Tim Hortons. A lot of people don't know Tim Hortons is now owned by a Brazilian conglomerate.
Conglomerate called 3G Capital, yes. Ezra Levant says, reminder, Tim Hortons hasn't been a Canadian company in more than a decade. It's owned by a Brazilian firm, 3G Capital. To save a few dollars, 3G Capital brings in foreign nationals rather than hiring young Canadians. Canada's youth unemployment is at 14%. So gross. And yes, Blacklock's reporter says Labor Department eased some restrictions on migrant labor under lobbying from Tim Hortons franchisees who claim they can't find Canadians to fill 63,000 jobs.
Yeah, and I would like to see, I don't know what kind of regulations I want to see in Alberta, but I would like to see something that massively benefits Albertan companies that are Albertan owned and brought up from the ground up. And that way you could compete with companies like Tim Hortons. If you're a conglomerate owned outside of the country, you don't get tax benefits. But if you're from Alberta and you're a small business, you should get major tax benefits. So you have a big advantage over these corporations.
And I was also trying to find a video that I saw a few weeks ago about comparing and we talk about this all the time, Tim Hortons in Vancouver, for example, or Toronto, with all around the world, and how nice they've made them all around the world, and how the Canadian ones look like insane asylums. Like literally they look like the replacements for the insane asylums that they closed in the 80s. But I couldn't find it because they took down the account. I don't know if because of that video, it wasn't dramatic or bad at all, but...
Well, it got really bad.
And maybe we can go into a Tim Hortons here and film and just make that comparison.
Yeah. And I will say this, I was looking in, because the Pierre Poilievre interview was pissing me off, so I was looking in, why didn't he bring up the legalization of all drugs in Vancouver, and then the giving out of safe supply drugs in Vancouver, and then the legalization of doing those drugs in public? I was really wanting him to bring that up, but I did look it up, and it was a trial program that went from 2023 to 2026. It just ended, and hopefully Tim Hortons and McDonald's are getting better in Vancouver now, because what was happening, all drugs were legalized and you were allowed to do them in public, so an officer wasn't allowed to tell you to stop or leave a business. So people were literally just doing their stuff right at the table in Tim Hortons and McDonald's in Vancouver. Mm-hmm. So that's how it got so bad, and it was so dangerous for a long time.
And you walk into any Tim Hortons in Vancouver, and I went in last September, I had to go to Vancouver for some paperwork, and I did the test. I entered McDonald's and a Tim Hortons. They still smell like pee and disgustingness. they still look run down and horrible. And again, maybe this weekend we can go film at 2 different Tim Hortons here in Mexico City, or like close to Mexico City, to show the contrast. Yeah, because there's a lot of videos already that people have taken of how Tim Hortons are in Canada, and the mismanagement of them. But Sorry, we ran out of air. From Keith Wilson, quote, Mark Carney has the authority to repeal already the tanker ban, C69, the industrial carbon tax, methane regulations, and net zero electricity rules, but he won't. That tells you everything about this government's priorities. These policies continue to block investment, cost jobs, and weaken the economic future of families and communities. Alberta Independence offers a path to restore control, remove these barriers, and build a stable, prosperous future. Because Chris Barco asks, what's the case for new pipelines? Report finds 31 billion economic lift and 112,000 jobs for Canada from new oil pipelines. And also Mark Carney doesn't want to do it because he has a lot of investments in oil and different types of energy and fuel through Brookfield Asset Management elsewhere around the world, a lot of it in the Middle East.
Well, and I have a little bit of a different take on this. Mark Carney has a lot of power and a lot of things he could be doing to help Alberta right now so they wouldn't separate, but he's not doing any of it. They want to wait to see how much support's behind it and things like that, and then he's going to throw it all at once to try to derail the movement, probably right before a vote. And what I'm thinking is they're going to have this first vote. They're going to say it's not clear enough, or they're going to try to throw some monkey wrench in it. So then they're going to make them redo the independence ballot. And then that's the point where Mark Carney realizes, okay, I'm going to throw all the goodies at them and we're going to derail this thing and we're going to put it in a national campaign and against it. And it's going to be very interesting what happens in the summertime, because the federal government's going to put some kind of campaign together to go against Alberta independence, because October 19th is going to be that vote.
Mm-hmm. We also have an update on that veteran that tried to go into the woods and got a $28,000 fine for it in Nova Scotia. From Jeff Everly, quote, Jesse Thomas from CTV News came out again to cover our third and final day of the hearing on the matter of the 2 charter challenges to the 2025 new.
Okay, and yeah, they did a good kind of overview here, so we'll watch it because I have been covering the trial and maybe I haven't explained it well enough, but they did a great job. This case is very important, I think, in Canada federally. There was another clip of him with his lawyers, but it was a little bit more convoluted. This was a lot more concise, I thought. And we're still waiting on the actual verdict. The trial concluded. They said they're going to give the verdict. They haven't given a timeline, but
far is too far during a crisis? That's the question before the courts, as Kate Bretner, Jeff Evely, and lawyers for the Canadian Constitution Foundation argue the Nova Scotia government went too far last summer when they imposed a blanket ban for entering the woods.
This isn't really about me going hiking. This is about the future. And like I said previously, this is about the kind of country that we want to leave for our children and grandchildren.
Evely's lawyers argued the province failed to consider charter rights, including freedom of movement, calling the ban overly broad and punitive.
The concept that the government provided in this case was to say that human presence itself is a proxy for fire risk. In other words, people are the problem. And that is not a rational
And
argument.
pause it?
Not a rational argument in a free.
And it's CTV, so I don't want to get dinged, but he intentionally got the ticket. Right, he went into the forest right by a ranger station so he could challenge this in court. It was always in his intention to challenge this in court. These climate lockdowns, somebody had to push back against them. It was this individual that decided to do it, along with his lawyers.
Free society. It's certainly not rational in Nova Scotia, where, Nova Scotians are some of the kindest and most rule-following Canadians you're going to meet.
The province argued the forest ban was reasonable given the extreme wildfire risk, drought conditions, and a lack of rain in the forecast at the time. The government's lawyer told the court the Minister of Natural Resources relied on expert advice from the department and acted within his authority to impose a temporary ban, arguing the greatest wildfire threat came from humans in the woods. Evely deliberately went into the woods near a DNR office last August and was fined nearly $29,000, a ticket he wanted to challenge in court, saying he didn't want to see a ban like this again during the next wildfire season.
There were plenty of measures that they could have put in place before getting all the way to an outright ban of all humans from the woods.
The judge has reserved his decision in a case that could have an impact on where the line is set between public safety and personal freedom. Jesse Thomas, CTV News.
Okay, good. And again, we're just waiting for the decision now. The trial's actually over, and it was the Justice Institute that, or not the Justice Institute, what was the name of it? His lawyers?
Canadian.
Okay, let's just continue on. I forgot the name.
Well, we're moving on to the next segment, but let me read some comments.
Okay.
From Sean says, so I can't vote for my candidate of choice because they can't speak incomprehensible Quebec Canadian French. Isn't that a little undemocratic?
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy.
And also says, I lived in the Netherlands, close to Belgium. You didn't need to know Flemish and French to run for office. I can't believe a supposedly democratic country would have this clearly limiting qualification.
Yeah, and I will say one thing. It's a shame that Maxime Bernier has such a thick accent. I think it hurts him on the national stage. Mm-hmm. He has done the opposite of Poilievre. When a lot of these issues weren't popular, he came out in support of them. And although I didn't agree with every stance he took, man, he takes the risk and he doesn't look at the polling. He takes the stance, and those are his honest, true feelings, I think.
Mm-hmm. Sean also says, if Saskatchewan also joins Alberta, will they finally adopt daylight savings time?
Well, I don't think they'll join them, but I think that, Alberta will blaze the trail for independence and give them the framework to blaze their own path for independence. And I think both economies are strong enough to stand on their own, and because they're ideologically aligned, they'll be very, very good trading partners, which they'll kind of need because the United States can be bipolar. Under Trump, he's going to be a good trading partner, but if Gavin Newsom or somebody else gets in there, it's not going to go so well for those few years. That being said, you're going to need partners that are ideologically aligned. The Yukon, the Northwest Territories are also very ideologically aligned.
Troglodyte says, LOL, the Flems and Walloons in Belgium might disagree.
Well, that's also what I wanted to say. Alberta should not be the 51st state because the United States is so bipolar, and we don't know who's going to be in office in 2028 or 2032.
Mm-hmm. Joe, hello, Joe, says Carney is into oil, just not Canadian oil. That's why he wants no more pipelines built. We produce and sell more, Brookfield loses. Exactly. And because he has those investments elsewhere around the globe, but he wants to keep them hidden, that's why he moved Brookfield Asset Management to the U.S.
Well, also his the framework he's building for the new economy and the new green economy is based on certain countries, certain Western countries. Canada is supposed to be the anchor for all those countries. So that's why he does not want to invest in Canadian oil or gas. It really undermines his long-term vision. He's been building for more than 20 years. And you really have to think about that. If you've been building something for 20 years, imagine how ideologically committed he's going to be to this. He's going to try to wait Trump out.
Sean says, Trump is forcing Gavin in California to reopen offshore drilling.
Yeah, and good on Trump for doing that. Gavin Newsom is like the Mark Carney of the United States. He's absolutely devastated California. I grew up half in the United States, half in Canada. I was born in Canada, but California is where I grew up a lot. And Gavin Newsom has absolutely destroyed that state. But ideologically, that state has been going the wrong direction for decades.
And Gavin Newsom was just the final push.
Ronald Reagan was the only good thing that happened to that state.
Troglodyte says she's a nationalist, self-admittedly. But at least we'll see where she lands at the end of all of this.
She's trying to keep her options open to Alberta independence because she knows there could be a big political future there. And if the vote comes in very strong, I think you may see her align a little bit more with Alberta independence, keeping her the door open. Poilievre isn't at all. But if the vote comes in very close, like say Alberta independence gets 51%, Danielle Smith's going to come out very hard against it, I think.
Sean says, here's my last joke. Is she better than the Prince Edward Island premiere? Probably, yes. Sean says, Wendy sold Tim Hortons 10 years, a long time ago. And yeah, it's been under Brazilian 3G capital control for a long time. And the decline was pretty noticeable, I'd say as well.
Yeah, but in other countries like Mexico, foreign countries in Central and South America, a big investment on the international stage for Tim Hortons. And man, when you walk into Tim Hortons, they've really leaned hard into their Canadian culture, their Canadian identity. Canada doesn't even have a unifying identity, but Tim Hortons in a foreign country definitely does. It's too bad the Tim Hortons in Canada don't.
Troglodyte says, Timmy's hasn't seen me for 8 years. And Joe Rush says, I had Timmy's twice in the last 15 years. Sometimes you just need caffeine.
I'll go, like, I hated it in Canada, but now that I live in Mexico, sometimes I go for nostalgic purposes. Once in a while when we're going to get groceries, there's a Tim Hortons in that mall. Yeah. And I'm like, oh God. And then it's they decorate it so Canadian. Yeah. And even though Canada's not like that, and I know it, it's a time I long for, and I wish Canada was, which it's not going to ever be. And that's why Alberta independence is the way forward.
Sean asks, they have Tim Hortons in Mexico. Starbucks is better. Anyways, I agree with you. However, Tim's is cheaper, at least in Canada. And yes, they didn't have them when I left, but they had them when I came back. So we've been to some.
And they're very, actually, Tim Hortons is nicer than Starbucks here, or just as nice. It's crazy how nice the Tim Hortons are in Mexico City.
We'll try to film over this weekend, maybe. We'll go to some. Troglodyte says, communism with a capitalist penalty. Exactly. And my kid's dad says, abolish public service unions, stop holding the taxpayers hostage.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many reasons. And the one thing I try to convey to everybody in Alberta independence that is going to take the vote coming up on October 19th is economics is only the surface level. It's everything else. And even economically, if they give you everything you want, there's still 10 times more waiting for you if you vote for Alberta independence. There's going to come a time and a place they're going to throw everything at you and try to appease you, except for more political power. They're not going to give that. They're going to give you an economic goodie bag. Mainstream media is going to frame it. It's going to be a nonstop bombardment of how Alberta is going to be the richest now that they got a pipeline and these contracts. They're trying to build the framework and the arguments around economics. Don't be fooled by it. And that's one of my main purposes for this channel is don't be fooled when they try to throw you a pipeline, because they're going to still want you to pay the master, and the master is still going to have that leash attached to you.
Sean says, Canadians always are very nice. I would disagree about being kind. That's a different thing. Yeah. And I think they were able to maintain this international image for the longest time of, oh, they always say sorry, they're always so nice. But internally, at least in Vancouver and the Canadians I dealt with, yes, some of them are very nice and they are very kind, but there's a very different side of them once, for example, the bad times of 2020 came in, and then you saw some of the people's true colors, and we continue to see how they vote as well.
Well, I don't know.
And their priorities.
I lived in a major city called Vancouver, and most major cities around Canada no longer have Canadians in them. There's traditional Canadians typically live rurally. You'll have a few here or a few there in a major city, but it's all transplants and immigrants that are there. So when you're saying Canadians are nice, you're really saying immigrants are nice, I guess, at that point.
But all you Albertans are lovely people. And the true Canadian conservatives that want to leave as well, or that see the problems, I agree with you. Primors007 says, independence from daylight saving. Well, they did that here in Mexico. Our president has the hour of God, as he called it, our former president. And now we don't have time changes. And it does mess up both people, communications. It's messed up everything.
Well, the president said we're on God's time here on Mexico, so we don't do a time change. But it messes us up when we're publishing videos sometimes. And I'm like, why isn't it getting so many views? It's because the time changed.
Yeah.
And then when we do guest appearances on WDW Pro or we're trying to schedule interviews and stuff like that, sometimes the time change messes us up.
And that's why we'll never give a time for when we do lives, because it does confuse people before.
We always do lives at 6 p.m. Mexico City time, but because everybody else's time changes, we don't say what time it is.
ON5B says, one thing that really drives me nuts is the major hurdles between provinces. We could move our businesses within a couple months, but the restrictive policies force us to liquidate here first. Wow.
Well, this is the big thing about if Alberta gets its independence and Saskatchewan gets its independence, I think there are going to be no trade barriers. And even though you'll be separate countries, it's going to be a massive, massive benefit. And I think Alberta has the same idea with the United States: take down as many trade barriers as possible.
And Sean says, Alberta won't have a requirement for dual languages, I hope. And I don't think so, no. Because most of them, I mean, everybody there speaks English.
English and redneck, so maybe.
Joe Rush says, Timmy's depend on owner of franchise, but they've let, like 3G Capital in general has let it go. And then it doesn't supervise the owners of each franchises. And that's why we also see them preferring foreigners to local Canadians when they're hiring.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like, well, no, I won't bring that talking point up.
Sean says, it was like that in Vancouver in 1997. All the Chinese moved in. It's so beautiful, too.
Yeah.
Troglodyte says, Canadians brought about some Geneva Conventions in war. Not so nice.
Okay, we'll do two more comments, and then we'll go back into Canadian politics as it's related to Alberta.
Joe Rush says, if you do become bilingual, might it be English and Punjabi? And Sean says, nice is how you act around others, and kind is how you act when no one is watching.
Yeah, I'll say one more thing. Again, natural resources isn't going to be the limiting factor or how fast you can approve these projects. You're not going to have enough population, and people are going to want to come to Alberta from other provinces, from other countries and stuff like this. Your immigration process really needs to be kind of something no other country's doing. It's just not anybody that wants to comes. Make sure they're ideologically aligned. Make sure they have a good moral foundation, and make sure there's a unifying Albertan identity for them to adopt into.
But also that there's a benefit to them emigrating for the country as well. Otherwise, you turn into what we're seeing elsewhere.
Yeah.
Sean says, nice is how you act around others, and kind is how you act when no one is watching.
Yeah, that's why she's always nice to me on camera.
No, I'm nice. I'm kind. KP4U says, territory of the states sounds good. But again, you get that bipolarity. So you can't trust the U.S.
I'm telling you, right?
That sense.
You do not want to be part of the U.S. It's too bipolar, especially with the way politics is run now. If Gavin Newsom gets into office, he's going to be making up for lost time. He's going to go even more ideologically to the left.
Insane.
It's going to be absolutely crazy. Now, if Vance or Rubio gets in there, yeah, you're okay, but you're only okay for 4 years until the next election comes up.
And now let's look at way more reasons for Alberta to separate. And he abandoned me again. Oh, speaking of, and I guess we put it in this section, but unfortunately we lost Chuck Norris today. I know a lot of, especially people from certain generations, look really up to him. Here in Mexico, he was, even with people among my generation, and boys always looked up to him and talked about him and used his name and the meme about Chuck Norris a lot. So it is sad and unfortunate to lose a real man.
Well,
I'm sure you want to talk about this.
It was supposed to be Canadian politics. I wanted to talk about this. This was the one Albertan Canadian story that I put in that wasn't, but it was somewhat related because he talked about how he became a conservative. So let's go into the trailer or
the clip.
The clip. I'm out of breath. I was trying to run because I wanted to talk about Chuck.
From Defiant Els, I used to be a Democrat, but unfortunately the Democrats went too far to the left.
Why are you a conservative, sir? Well, I used to be a Democrat, but unfortunately the Democrats went too far to the left, and the Republicans moved into the position that the Democrats were 40 years ago. See, and so what the Democrats believed 40 years ago, the Republicans believe today. And so I realized that I had to go to a Republican because the Democrats just got too far off the trail. They just got completely off the trail and lost all reality of what America stood for. And so I realized that Republicans at this point in time are more focused on what is best for America than what the Democrats are.
Why are you a conservative?
Yeah, and that can be said about Canada as well. They lost all reality of what it meant to be Canadian, and now Alberta represents that far more than Canada ever did.
And yes, rest in peace to Chuck Norris and to everybody that looked up to him as well, and leaving a legacy that I think will last a long time.
Yeah, he's fantastic. He was actually from before my time, but he still had a big impact on my generation, which was like Van Damme, Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger. So yeah, Chuck Norris was an absolute legend, and we salute him and rest in peace.
Yes. But now let's get into the actual craziness, starting with Mark Carney and the duality of Canadian politics and what Pierre Poilievre did, showing he's even more dumb. From Ari Zelaya, quote, Carney has zero class. Poilievre refused to criticize Carney on the biggest podcast in the world. Again, gloves are fully on.
Do you not learn anything from Donald Trump? How do you win an election? I mean, he walked down that golden staircase. He had almost no chance to win that election, and he took the gloves off right from the beginning and went hard. Poilievre has never taken the gloves off to this day, maybe once when he was eating an apple.
And he says,
but his opponents are taking the gloves off every time.
Mario says he could have done it easily. He refused to do it on foreign soil, but Carney did the complete opposite on American national TV.
Well, and they're trying to praise him for it. Like, oh, good for you for keeping the gloves on. And the more praise he gets for keeping the gloves on, the more he's going to do it. And the more left he's going to slowly drift over time.
Right. Here's what the Conservatives have, and this will blow your mind. So the Conservatives are run by Pierre Poilievre.
Yes.
Did I say that correctly?
Yes.
Sorry, Jon Stewart's going to ding us. So we're going to have to pause it every 20 seconds or so.
It's a fictional J.K. Rowling name at best. Pierre Poilievre. This always fascinates me. I want to show this. So Trudeau, obviously. The other guy is Pierre Poilievre. It looks like, and he is Trudeau's rival, yes? They look like two fictional boys' school rivals.
And pause it? Yeah, and they're just going to continue to go at him through here. Poilievre should have took note of this. He should have went at him. I know he's going to get praised in the short term, but he's just going to get comfortable with never taking the gloves off.
And also, we also showed those two pictures of Poilievre and Trudeau with semi costumes they were trying to use.
Poilievre seems like a villain in a Karate Kid movie. Like there's something very, very off-putting. What is he like in person? Take your time.
You're not far off. I'll say this.
Yes.
There is a type of politician. You have a few of them here in the United States. I think we just
Stop it.
Yeah. They had a lot in and around Brexit.
Yes.
And we have Mr. Poilievre. In Canada, a type of politician who's, tend to be lifelong politician.
And pause it. And if they do go into a snap election, do you think Mark Carney is not taking the gloves off and going to go directly at you, Poilievre? Absolutely insane for you not to go at him. And I know you're going to get praised for it in the short term, but this has been your MO for a long time now.
And it's led you to nowhere.
Really?
Tend to worship the market. They've never actually worked in the private sector.
Right.
And they see opportunity in tragedy, like you just had with the California fires, these horrible fires.
Correct.
And they see opportunity and tragedy to push an agenda that, here's one they prepared earlier, and they fit it in. And so whether it was Brexit, here often, the star of the beast type approach. So Pierre Poilievre, when COVID started, his reaction was, this is a good time to cut spending and cut taxes. Everyone's just been pushed out of a job. Nobody's got work. So let's cut the taxes on the work they don't have, and let's take away the social safety net when everybody's vulnerable.
And pause it?
Yeah.
That plan would have worked fantastically as long as you kept everything open. Your thing was, let's shut everybody down, let's lock everybody up in their homes, and then let's turn on the money printer, but make sure nobody can go to work. Here in Mexico, the government didn't have that option. They had to keep everything open, and people went to work.
Most things, yeah.
And how did that work out for you?
Fortunately, he was in opposition. So.
Oh, that was his idea.
That was his idea. Yeah.
And the people now.
You can leave it there. I don't want to get dinged, but Jon Stewart and 60 Minutes are the worst. If you play any of their clips, they try to ding you.
And if you're watching this little part on replay, it means that we had to cut that clip, but we'll talk a little bit about it. Jon Stewart, and it's insane to me that they try to compare. Even now, but at some point, Poilievre to Trump, because it's almost a complete opposite as well. For the longest time, it has been.
Yeah.
and because he doesn't want to take the suggestion.
You can, because Poilievre's best policies, if you ask him what his policies are, he'll give them to you. And then nobody ever asked him this question, but ask him, well, what politician's implementing those on an international stage? And the answer is Donald Trump. And that's the
But
thing.
he doesn't want to say it because he's scared. But from Table Salt, quote, "This is crazy. TikToker uncovers medical journal that estimates Canada will save trillions in medical costs by offering MAID to mentally ill patients in 2027.
And we have a video coming out about MAID tomorrow. We made one. The one coming out tomorrow is about MAID in Alberta and how they're actually pushing back. I hope other provinces kind of take notice. It's been completely industrialized and profited on both ends by the federal government.
What happens when you open the door to killing? You don't get to close or decide what walks through.
But Kelsey, what would be the incentive? What is the motive?
Ready? I got one for you.
Because you got to have a motive.
Money. Let me show
Where
you
is
how.
it? Someone
Let me show
dies,
you
it's
how.
over. Chronicity is big business.
No. This is where you're wrong here, darling. End of life is money time. Okay? So, Canada, a new journal on the SAGE journal on the Omega website. You can go find it on SAGE. You know, the medical journals that are peer-reviewed papers from universities, which I can show it to you. It's called the Journal of Death and Dying. It came out this year. Okay. And they did an estimate of what Canada looks to save once they turn the mental illness into the MAID protocol. So from 2027 to 2047, which is a 20-year period, that is when mental illness, meaning anybody can qualify. You don't have to be dying anymore, sweetheart. You can just have a hard time. And once you're in the system, you're in it.
So it doesn't cost them money to treat you through the government, so they save money.
You ready to find out how much? 2027 to 2047, they're expected to use MAID on roughly, this is the journal's, they've done the math, this is the journal's estimate, 14.7 million Canadians. Okay? Mm-hmm. They're going to save to a tune of $1.273 trillion instead of providing palliative care.
And that's just where they're saving money. They're also selling the organs, selling the blood on the back end. If you want the MAID program, you're forced to sign up as an organ donor so they can profit on that end. It's absolutely disgusting program. I'm glad when they talked about mental health, mental illness, how they're expanding it out. Danielle Smith is pushing back against that. In Alberta, other provinces need to do the same.
And children, which is even more insane. But I'll say this is a clear example of what happens when you socialize medicine and when you only use a socialized medicine model. It doesn't work, and instead of fixing the failing Canadian healthcare system, they are just going to off everybody because it's the death code.
Well, yeah, we got a video coming out tomorrow about it. Our MAID videos never do well, but I'm going to continue to talk about it because it's an absolutely disgusting practice the federal government is involved in.
More insanity. Quote, Canada calls it supporting Canadian content. The US is calling it what it actually functions as in practice, a mandatory payment from foreign companies to operate in Canada, because that's what it is. If you make over $25 million in Canada, you're required to get 5% of your revenue into government-directed content funds.
And this is disgusting because it's government-directed funds, meaning they're going to get 5% of that $25 million, and they can make propaganda with it. It's another propaganda arm of the federal government. What would be more reasonable would be if the company itself had to invest 10% of its profits and make its own content involving all Canadian writers, all Canadian actors, stuff like that. But of course, the government wants another propaganda arm on top of the CBC.
Let's be honest, if Trump forced Netflix to pay a percentage of revenue into a U.S. government fund, people would lose their minds. It would be framed as authoritarian, anti-free market, a direct attack on global business, fascist, you name it. Unfortunately for Canada, the market doesn't care how you try to sell the squeezing of more money out of everyone, nor does our greatest trading partner.
Yeah, and I'll also say we used to work in the film industry with the Teamsters Union, as well as I worked as grip, lighting, and camera. So that this industry is close to my heart. It's a damn shame. Like, it's starting to die in Canada, and a lot of it is for over regulations and policies like this.
Which is the opposite of why they moved some of the industry initially into Canada, because of the tax benefits and the tax breaks and all the things they could do within Canada to start the film industry that thrived within Vancouver and Toronto.
Well, if the dollar really takes a dump in Canada, maybe it would be the revitalization of it, because they do have the infrastructure with William White's and stuff like that. William White's is a rental house where you just drive your truck up and they give you all the equipment for the movie. So very few cities have that kind of infrastructure.
But also insane, let's remember that Facebook and etc. also cannot show news within Canada because of the idiotic laws that were passed during Trudeau's time. From Ryan Gertison, Canadians are unhappy due to social media use. Good one, CBC. And yes, CBC says Canada slips further down in the world happiness ranking due in part to due in part to social media use. Finland was the happiest place in the world for the 9th year in a row. No, it's because Canada is a horrible place to live right now, especially for young people.
Yeah, absolutely. And the propaganda is starting to break down, and they don't have as much money to buy these global rankings anymore.
That too.
And being 25th, if you look amongst young adults, they're actually much further down the list. I believe they're 70th.
Because there's no opportunities for them.
Yeah.
They can't build a life. They can't have a family. They can't find a job. They can't do anything.
The next story is actually one of the most interesting stories of the day, and I brought it up a few times already.
From 604 Raw, quote, BC is losing people faster than anyone else in Canada. The province dropped 0.7% last year, losing more than 41,000 residents. That's roughly the size of Mission. It's tied with Ontario for the biggest decline in the country. The main reason is a sharp fall in non-permanent residents like international students and workers. More deaths than births also played a part. This comes after years of record growth. I'm glad we contributed to that statistic.
Yeah, 41,000. I've recently talked to a friend that still lives in Vancouver, and he said he wants to get out of there. He's thinking about moving back to Alberta. What we do need to have a press for is like-minded independence people that want independence for Alberta. There's a whole lot of people across Canada that would vote for Alberta independence. And before they move to the States, which most people are moving to the States because that's where the opportunities are, give Alberta independence a chance.
And BC has completely decimated itself, not just in recent years, but for the longest time. And we also continuously talk about, I used to work in high schools, international high schools, but you also used to work with a lot of people that had just migrated and were doing odd jobs here and there. And they, within the first few months, realized that they wanted to go back to where they came from because there's no opportunities, and they saw the reality of Canada, not what they're sold in the brochures and by the people that try to get them to go to Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. They realize they have to work 2 and 3 jobs just to pay their bills. And most of these people are well-to-do in their home country, meaning they already have houses back home. The amount of times somebody showed me that freaking mansion they had back in India or back in China or wherever the hell they were from and said, I need to get out of here. I don't even enjoy my life. I already have a house back home. I didn't know it was going to be like this. And so they're bypassing PR and said, I'd rather just leave the country at this point.
Yeah, because a lot of immigrants are able to have really good lives where they're from. They think it's going to get better, or they're going to have more opportunities in Canada. Then they arrive there and see the cost of living and the housing crisis. They can't find a job. They can't do anything. And they're like, well, if I had a giant house back home and the nice fancy cars and even sometimes butlers and maids and etc., why am I still here living miserably working a minimum wage job? From 666 Bus TV, Canada's population dropped in 2025, the first time ever since 1867. The population dropped by 102,436 people in 2025.
Well, and it's even far more than that because immigration numbers manipulate that number. So you're having a mass amount of people leave the country. What this says to me, after we get the signatures for Alberta independence, let's make a drive for number one, American media, and let's get Keith Wilson on Joe Rogan. But number two, one of the big things should be to talk to people in other provinces through Canadian social media and said the opportunity for your future lies in Alberta and Alberta independence. The vote is taking place. Move to Alberta if you want to vote for Alberta independence. That way we can push back against any monkey wrenches Mark Carney's going to try to throw in this thing.
And hopefully, if you're allowed to, given the state of Canadian social media and the new laws they want to implement.
Yeah.
But I'll also say, once again, it is important to generate the conditions for young people to be able to have kids and prosper and not just try to fill the gaps in with immigration, because then you get Canada.
Absolutely. And just one more thing. If we do make some kind of drive for patriots to move to Alberta to vote for independence, we got to know the demographic it's going to be. It's going to be young men. Young men have absolutely lost hope in Canada. And it's Pierre Poilievre's voters that are living in other provinces. Those are the people that would be likely to relocate to Alberta for Alberta independence.
Sorry, that was you. From Melissa, quote, US-based Ecolab just bought Canadian-based Cool IT in one of the biggest Canadian tech takeovers ever. Elbows up. Yeah, Kool-Aid.
And this is going to be indicative of what's going to happen as the Canadian economy falls off a freaking cliff. The Americans, the Chinese, all these foreign countries are going to come in and buy up every company. And then you're just going to have shell companies, just like the mining industry in Canada. It's all owned by the Chinese, but it's made in Canada on the label.
And then that is, for some reason, still a label respected around the world. But Mary Zelaya says, quote, Bank of Canada study confirms what I mentioned years ago. The declining GDP per capita is because we are losing to the top earners. 40% of Canadians who would be top 1% earners have emigrated to the United States, and they'll continue to do so. Oh, sorry, this is a reading one. I thought it was a video.
Well, and the point of this goes with everybody that was fleeing Canada. Like I was saying, they're moving to the United States, and it's young men. There's an opportunity here for Alberta independence to really capitalize on this. And these are the people you're going to need, because once you get your independence, you're going to need citizens, and you're not going to want to go outside the country. If you can get good conservative Canadians from other provinces to go to Alberta to really build a long-term life and build in the foundation of Alberta independence, that's going to be the best way.
30 to 50% of the next tier gone to, they're more educated than native-born Americans. They earn more. They cluster in the top income brackets. We're not just in a brain drain. We're exporting our entire upper class. And what's left behind? GDP per capita that grew 3.2 in 10 years, while the U.S. grew 20.2%. We fell below the OECD average for the first time in recorded history. Food bank usage doubled. Wait times hit 28.6 weeks. Happiness ranking at an all-time low. Government spending went from 38% to 45% of the economy. We have more government with less results.
Well, and I will say this. A lot of people, when they watch America, they'll watch American media or Canadian media, and it has a lot of TDS. People don't realize how good the economy's doing in Trump's second term. They're outperforming China, and it's the first time in decades, especially when you compare America to every other country. They're actually doing phenomenal. America was one of the major countries we used to cover when we did geopolitics, and it's absolutely phenomenal what he's been able to do. You can compare housing prices. I mean, any metric the United States is doing well right now. Compared to Canada, but especially compared to the rest of the world.
But also what happens when the top earners leave a country and a system that has completely hinged and relied upon taxation and the socialist communist wet dream that is taxation and being able to fund yourself and your government through that. We're seeing the debt already, but you also start taxing the lower income earners more and more and more until it becomes impossible to live, which we're already seeing.
Well, once Alberta independence is actually official and you realize, oh, we just greenlit so many natural resource projects, we don't have enough population. A lot of those people that went to the States will migrate back to Alberta, especially if there's no taxes. Because even if you did go to the States, there's still like a high tax rate on a lot of the things they're doing.
And the potential of the bipolar government that could come in.
Yeah.
From Ryan Gertison, only 2 million left with expired visas to go. Good job, CBSA, because yeah, I mean they're hunting them down and asking them politely to please leave, like Pierre said.
The Canada Border Services Agency says dozens of people have now been deported as part of a growing crackdown on extortion-related crime in British Columbia. The agency says it's launched more than 370 immigration investigations, issued 70 removal orders, and has already removed 35 people from the country. Officials highlighted 2 of those deported, one who entered on a study permit, the other as a temporary resident.
That's good.
Both were
later and only 2 more million to go is right. And remember the clip, I think we played 2 clips of Poilievre and Joe Rogan, and he asked, was this a real issue? He goes, well, yeah, well, kind of. But
we have to ask them to leave politely.
Yeah, we have to ask them to leave politely, and we don't need to use ICE, and we're actually getting it done. No, you're not getting it done. There's millions you need to get it done with. 70 people does not cut it.
Out of 2 million.
But I'm glad
dozens are being investigated.
But I'm glad you went on Joe Rogan and you told the whole world everything's fine in Canada.
And Canada's great. There's no issues there. And you'll be prime minister soon. Jasmine Lane says, quote, remember when everyone was calling the Conservative convention fee a scandal? They seem awfully quiet about the Liberal convention fees. Funny how it's corruption when Conservatives do it, but the Liberals are charging up to $1,775 a ticket for their own convention with the same tax credits and silence.
Okay, yeah, and I agree with this, but the Liberals have always charged a lot. I don't think the Conservatives always did charge a lot. They tried to make they tried to make it a lot more approachable for a lot of people. The big problem I had with the Conservative convention mention is content creators that wanted to go that they knew were attached to Alberta independence, they refused to let in, which was absolutely ridiculous. And again, it was another backhanded slap to Alberta independence. And if they don't know it,
and to regular people,
Alberta independence voters are conservative voters. You still need them. So you should show some respect. But instead, you show more respect to immigrants than you do people in Alberta.
Mm-hmm. And we also continue to talk on and on, because it's insane, of the grift that is the homeless industrial complex, both in the U.S. and in Canada. But from the official record, quote, 500,000 per homeless person in Toronto, 220,000 in Vancouver.
Annually per year. $220,000 in Vancouver, $500,000 in Toronto. That's enough to buy a home. What I would say is, like, this is absolutely ridiculous.
Still not enough. Canadian cities confirmed this week that homelessness has officially become one of the country's fastest growing industries. Toronto now spends up to $500,000 per person annually, while Vancouver comes in at a more modest $200,000 figures.
This is an absolute grift, and the same thing happens in California. Homelessness is the biggest grift. It only gets bigger the more money they pump into it. It's family members and friends of politicians that run these companies, open these companies. They have minimal workers that work for them, and they get millions and millions of dollars. This needs to stop.
Experts say depend largely on which denominator is politically convenient. Officials insist the system is working. It's created thousands of jobs across multiple departments. One source noted coordination alone requires entire teams. Critics say the model has quietly evolved, create a crisis, expand the response, and then scale the response faster than the results. Government, they argue, now plays both roles, helping manage the problem while steadily growing the infrastructure around it. Residents say they've noticed. There are more programs, more funding, more people involved than ever, said one taxpayer. It just doesn't seem like fewer people need help. City leaders maintain that solving homelessness remains the priority, though they acknowledge it will require more time, more resources, and likely several new layers of administration.
$500,000 per person. I mean, God, you can be giving homes away for that price.
At press time, both cities announced expanded hiring across homelessness-related departments to better address the ongoing shortage of solutions. Of course, if you build this giant monster of an industry, you don't want it to end. You don't really want to end homelessness, because then you're out of a job and you're out of a cause as well to get more money.
And then they want to virtue signal on this.
Yeah.
And then they want to campaign on these issues, how we're fixing it, how we've done this. Oh, we need more money for it. So then once they get in power, they put more money and they line the pockets of their friends. The homeless industrial complex is just as bad as the military industrial complex, the pharmaceutical industrial complex. It's rife with corruption.
Also from the official record, quote, Vancouver has created an entire tax-funded economy around homelessness. Vancouver officials confirmed this week that the city now spends between $100,000 and $220,000 per annually, making homelessness one of the city's fastest-growing public sectors. What began as a crisis has since evolved into a fully integrated economic ecosystem, complete with multiple layers of administration, overlapping services, and a level of coordination typically reserved for major infrastructure projects, minus the visible results. We're making historic investments, said one official, standing near an encampment that has also been making a long-term investment in the same location.
And at the same time, they legalize all drugs, and you can do all drugs, including the most hardcore drugs, in public in Vancouver. They're going to exacerbate the problem. At the same time, they're going to invest billions, and then they're going to say we need more billions.
And 10 cities continue to grow as well. But says the situation is complex. The exact cost depends on how it's calculated. Divide total spending by the entire homeless population and the number appears manageable. Divided by those actually living on the street and it becomes to resemble a mid-level executive salary. City insiders say the flexibility is intentional. It allows us to communicate progress while maintaining urgency, one source explained. Residents say they've noticed a different trend. I've seen more programs, more funding, more announcements, not fewer tents. Officials emphasize that the issue is not a lack of resources, but the need for more coordination, more investment, blah, 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 blah.
Not more. This is ridiculous.
And it is one of the reasons, I'll be honest, it is one of the reasons why in the whole giant checklist of why I wanted to leave, that was one of them, because you can manage and you can deal, you're a guy, you're big, you know, jiu-jitsu, but I don't, and I have no way to defend myself, especially in Canada where it's illegal. So I've been chased around, I've been spat on, I've been yelled at, they've tried to steal my bag, and at night it became impossible to try to walk even our dog, plus all the paraphernalia that lines the streets and the human stuff that
Well,
also
a
lines
lot
the
of people
street.
ask, well, why do they have all these crazy liberal policies like they legalize all drugs, which exacerbates mental illness and all this? Because they create an industrial complex based around that so everybody can line their pockets. And then nobody has the ability to stand up and say, no, this isn't a good idea, because they're going to virtue signal. They're going to call you all kinds of names.
If you don't care about the homeless, how can
Yeah.
you say that?
No, I care about the homeless, but I care about corruption as well. And we need to clean up the corruption before we can clean up the homeless situation.
And we do need to bring back insane asylums, like literally.
Let's go into some comments if we can, and then we'll finish up the last few stories before we go to RUMBLE.
Joe Rush says, I would actually like to learn how to speak Punjabi and Cantonese. Well, there's nothing stopping you, I guess. It's difficult. Ni hao. That's all I know how to say. Troglodyte says, rest in peace, Chuck. Yes. Troglodyte also says, enter the dragon. Joe Rush says, Mandarin is what I meant to say. Both would be cool. I mean, there's Babbel. There's a bunch of apps. Don't use Duolingo. It's a woke virtue
It's
signal.
going to be interesting what happens. Everybody said Mandarin was the new language of the world, but I mean, Trump is now outperforming China. China's on a decline, and their population is in big trouble too. So it would be actually interesting what happens there.
It might be Punjabi that everybody's going to be speaking.
They have the population.
Yeah. Joe Rush says, good guys wear black. Troglodyte also says, Carney.
So I got a black tie.
Carney is the kid we all hated in high school. That's what I'm trying to say. And he feels so cool after talking to the cool kid, Joe Rogan.
Well, now he's rolling over you.
Joe Rush says, you mean Poilievre and Castro? LOL. Oh, sorry, Carney, you said, but I would also put Poilievre in there. Sean says, is English Carney's first language? I can't understand what he's saying. Lying is his first language.
Yeah, pretty much.
And grifting. Troglodyte says, mating you for profit. That's the only way they can get profit, and that they can fix the healthcare system. Troglodyte says, I'm sad. Also says, Sean says, being to Finland, it sucks. Because Finland was voted the #1 happiest one, which is weird because they're a Nordic country where there's no sun most of the time.
Yeah.
So how are they the happiest? I think they just inflate their statistics. Troglodyte says, GTFO and go home then. I don't know to who or to what, but.
Okay, 2 more comments and then we'll finish up with the stories here.
Joe Rush says, that's crazy. More are leaving Canada than are coming here. That says a lot.
Yeah, absolutely does. And it's been on that path for a long time. The problem is they were able to manipulate statistics through immigration.
Well, rush in more and more people. Sean says, and California, exact same issue, boosting population figures through foreign immigration. And
not just foreign immigration
as well.
Not just foreign immigration, illegal immigration. Foreigners don't even want to go to California, but illegal immigrants flood there because they're not only a sanctuary state, they're the #1 sanctuary state where they really protect their illegal immigrants with their policies, which makes the state unmanageable for their regular citizens.
More comments?
No, let's finish up the stories here, and then we'll
get to the
finish.
rest.
Then we'll do the comments.
But speaking, someone just brought up MAID again. And this is insane too, and it just shows you the priorities. Ryan Gertison says, this 84-year-old woman woke up one morning in horrible pain. She went to the Vancouver General Hospital, not surprised, to find out what was going on. Before she got any answers, the nurse offered her MAID. When ending people is offered, because before care, there's a problem.
Yeah, a bit of a heartbreaking story here.
But I'm glad she's doing good.
I am 84 years old, and a year ago, an amazing thing happened. When I got out of bed one morning, I was suddenly in excruciating pain, so much so that my daughter came running in from another room. She called an ambulance. Off I went to the Vancouver General Hospital, and I was approached by a young lady doctor who the very first words out of her mouth is, we would like to offer you MAID. I was taken aback. That was the last thing on my mind. I just wanted to find out why I was in pain. I did not want to die. And I was a month in hospital, came home and recuperated nicely enough that I could take some trips. Off I went last year to Cuba before the problems today in Cuba. And then just recently, I have been to Mexico and Guatemala. So my recovery has been amazing. And there was no need for MAID to even be suggested.
Yeah,
Well, it was because she costs the healthcare system a bunch of money.
This has to be in their training guidelines now. They're offering people MAID service before they're offering a medical service. This is crazy. And you got to figure every step along the way, they're going to start offering MAID. Oh, your test results came back. They're bad. You have 6 months to live. Do you want MAID?
Funnily enough, Canada does still have some morals and ethics within their death cult, just not for humans. Zelaya says, quote, Canada is debating whether boiling lobsters. Sorry, this is too funny.
This was, and I'm glad you brought this story. And a lot of people get on Mario because he's a lot of a nationalist, but he does get good stories.
It's tragic but funny. Canada's debating whether I can't even get through it. Boiling lobsters alive is ethical. The UK already banned it. Meanwhile, Fenty injection sites are government funded and made. We have reached peak stupidity.
Well, if they could make money off of boiling lobsters,
then they would.
Oh, God.
We care more about crustaceans' feelings than human lives.
Well, and the big crazy part of that was the UK already banned it.
And they wanted to end that little old lady that came to Mexico and Cuba and had a great old time after she got better. They wanted to end her, but now lobsters need to be protected.
Yeah, that's why.
Goodbye lobster rolls, which are some of my favorites.
That was the original reason I put that story about the lady with maid.
I normally don't do videos on things that are stupid, but this is so incredibly stupid that I have to make a video. Is Canada on the verge of banning boiling lobsters? Here's why the ethical debate is gaining steam. In England, they're the latest country to ban the practice of live boiling for ethical reasons. And they're not the only country. Switzerland has done it as well. Are you kidding me? Canada is going to impose laws on what we can and cannot boil and how we cook our food? This is just getting absolutely ridiculous. We literally have government-funded fentanyl sites. We fund them. Government-funded fentanyl sites, and they're going to tell us what we can and cannot boil? Insane. I normally don't do videos.
Oh.
And I love lobster rolls. Like, they're some of my favorite food.
Yeah, absolutely crazy.
You don't like them, though.
I don't mind them.
Lobster rolls?
Yeah, I didn't mind them.
You tried it and you said, this is gross.
No, I didn't say it was gross. I said it was fine. I ate it and it was good, but it wasn't great. You hyped it up like it was the greatest food ever.
Because I love them. You don't like mayo, though.
Yeah, I don't like mayo.
And there's some that have it, some that don't. Moving on. But it's still insane to me. They're willing to ending people's lives just because they have a headache. That's not unethical. But boiling lobsters, that's unethical. Sorry.
Well, Peter always puts statistics very good. I know we talked about the job loss, but he puts it together with other statistics, and he always does a great job.
Canada just lost 109,000 jobs in 2 months. In U.S. terms, that's almost 1 million jobs. Meanwhile, food inflation just hit 7.3%.
Canada just lost 84,000 jobs in a single month. In U.S. terms, that is almost 800,000 jobs in a month. That goes on top of losing 25,000 jobs in the previous month, January, which is another 250,000 in U.S. terms. Of course, 96% were private sector jobs over the 2 months. Government workers are doing just fine. Meanwhile, a new study found over half of Canadians have to borrow money for groceries, including buy now, pay later and payday loans. It also found over half of Canadians are skipping meals to make ends meet. That is partly because they don't have jobs and partly because food inflation is now the highest in the G7 at 7.3% year on year. Beef is up 17%, coffee's up 30%. Timmy's is a luxury at this point. So incomes are West Virginia, home prices are San Francisco, and now Canadian jobs and groceries are going Venezuela. Broadcaster CBT sums it up, quote, "It feels like an empty pit of despair. But don't worry, assisted suicide is now same day in Canada, perfect if you are hungry and in a rush." The numbers come from Stats Canada, who report 109,000 full-time jobs were torched in just 2 months. Outside COVID, that is the most since the 2008 crisis. This sent unemployment to 6.7%, which is 50% higher than the U.S. Canadian youth unemployment hit 14.1%, which is 1 in 7. Keep in mind, that's just people actively looking for jobs. It does not count discouraged workers who have given up. That might bring it to 1 in 4 young Canadians. So what's driving it? Well, part of it was importing 4 million third world migrants, that's about 40 million in U.S. terms, who turned Canada into a one-party communist state, liberal state, and raised welfare costs and taxes to the point Canadians can only spend half their paycheck. But the other part was Canada's globalist tool Mark Carney going elbows up with Trump, meaning let's fight, playing the nationalist card instead of negotiating to reduce Canada's trade barriers that shut out American goods. To give a flavor, Canada puts 160% tariffs on American eggs, 200% on chicken, 298% on American milk, cheese, and butter.
Pause it.
They block American.
And again, I talked about this in regards to the Pierre Poilievre interview. Yeah. He said he kept telling Joe, you need to stop tariffing us. We need to get those tariffs down. Never once did he mention these tariffs Canada has had on for decades, and we're talking hundreds of %. For some reason, the Canadians don't think the Americans know about this. Trump's talked about it. He's talking about it. Trust me, the Americans know, and that's why these negotiations are happening. If you keep pushing it. What's going to happen is they're going to take away the North American Free Trade Agreement, and they're going to go tit for tat. They're just going to take the things they need. They're going to leave the other things they don't. This might be good for Western Canada because Western Canada happens to have everything the Americans want.
Banks, while Canadian banks have grabbed $700 billion of U.S. deposits, and they block American trucking, replacing us with Indians who have killed dozens of Canadians, including a crash in Saskatchewan that killed 16 members of a junior hockey team. The trade war drives food inflation since half of Canada's imported food comes from the U.S., so retaliatory tariffs get passed on. And the trade war is crushing Canadian manufacturing as companies flee to the U.S. Jeep just moved its biggest plant ever from Ontario to Illinois and Ohio. Nationwide, goods-producing sectors in Canada lost 28,000 jobs last month, 250,000 in U.S. terms in a single month. So Elbows Up plays great with Canada's elite, who are willing to sacrifice Canadian blue-collars to score points on America and Trump. Many probably enjoy the sacrifice since Canada's left-wing elite hates blue-collars just like in America.
Okay, and you can leave it there. And 1 in 4 people work for the federal government and their jobs are secure. That's part of the reason the economy is doing so bad. They need those regulations in order to create these industrial complexes, whether it's homeless industrial complex or other government sectors. 1 in 4 is a guaranteed voting base. You're not going to lose at that point. And Poilievre has talked about wanting to cut down government. Those government workers, that's 25% of the population. You can count that vote goodbye.
From Marie-Zelaya as well, Carney's newest floor crosser just got caught expensing purchases from her own business to taxpayers. She only paid it back after she got caught. This is who they're recruiting.
Well, and supposedly there's a rumor going around that $200 million was funneled to her husband's business. So we're going to still wait to get more relevant details on that. But could that be why she crossed the floor? $200 billion or $200 million?
So yeah, floor crossing MP Idlut, I can never say that name, expense purchases for her own business. Nunavut MP reimbursed the House of Commons and says the purchases were made in error.
Somebody needs to keep a very close eye on her and everybody within that community and how the money is currently flowing. There's a reason she crossed the aisle. There was a payoff made.
And the other floor crossers too.
Yeah, but it's going to be harder to see that. She comes from a smaller community. It's going to be very easy to see where that money's flowing in there.
From Table Salt, retired RCMP Director and MP Cooper revealed that Carney and the RCMP signed a security agreement with the same Chinese department who installed 4 Chinese police stations in Canada to intimidate the diaspora. And we've also talked about how they're now bringing in Chinese armed guards with arms that are not allowed in Canada to patrol natural resource sites.
And we got 2 more stories after this before we go to RUMBLE. If you have any comments, leave them now and we'll hopefully get to them.
So-called strategic partnership with the Beijing dictatorship includes an agreement on law enforcement cooperation between the RCMP and Beijing's Ministry of Public Security. For the record, this is the same Ministry of Public Security that was involved in operating several illegal police stations in Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver to spy, harass, intimidate, and coerce diaspora communities. Do I have that right? Yes. Okay. Is it accurate to say that Beijing's overriding consideration for law enforcement is to advance the interests of the Chinese Communist Party?
Law enforcement in China is part of the PRC apparatus. You can't separate them from the government, and they do not operate under the rule of law. I experienced it firsthand. I experienced it on one occasion when probably a year before I took my retirement, I was tasked with meeting a delegation from China. This is the last time they came over looking for people under an alleged economic offense, and I put it in quotations. And they wanted, they basically literally sat down in the room. There was 4 Chinese from the delegation and stated, "We expect you to identify where they are and we'll look after it from there." Quote, unquote.
So, as you noted, we're not dealing with a regime that respects the rule of law, due process, judicial independence, or other legal and ethical constraints that our law enforcement are bound by. So is it fair to say...
And pause it.
Honestly, Canada doesn't either right now. Like, everything he listed there, Canada doesn't respect it that well either.
They're setting up illegal police stations. They're coming over demanding the government tell where people are so they can go take care of it. They have no regard for the law. When the Canadians had one of the executives from Huawei and the Americans wanted her, they didn't say tell her where she is and we'll kidnap her and take care of it. Like, there's two different systems of governments, and people have Chinese washed a lot of things that happen and think things are a lot more rosy than they are. They do a lot of underhanded things behind the scenes. So do the Americans, but it's different.
Canada cooperates with such a system, with such a regime. We're not an equal partner.
Not even close. They have a total different agenda than what we have, and I think it puts. I don't see how the RCMP can operate under this secret agreement. I think it's flawed and it's dangerous to not our economic, but our security interests.
Okay, so recently, 10 Hong Kong diaspora organizations sent an open letter to Mark Carney expressing deep fear and anxiety about this agreement. In essence, they are concerned that Beijing will use this agreement to target political opponents of the regime in Canada under the guise of law enforcement. You provided...
Okay, you can leave it there. And one of the big things is immigrants from China used to be people fleeing the Chinese Communist Party. That's the older generation. Over the last 10 years, and especially recently, every single person immigrating from China has to be approved by the Chinese Communist Party, meaning they're only CCP members that are immigrating into Canada now. And that's why you see these two different groups of Chinese immigrants and with two different
priorities.
Two different ideologies really as well.
Yeah. However, speaking of the cooperation between Canada and the CCP, from Juno News, Public Safety Minister Gary, I can't say that name, says Bill C-22, Lawful Access Act, would modernize police access to data to better investigate digital crime. They're going after you CCP style now.
And yeah, they're going after you CCP style. This is more censorship laws coming in, more tracking laws coming in, and they're trying to frame it as it's not that. This is how they're trying. This is why they love immigrants into the country. This is how they can sell it on mainstream media.
Because it's about keeping Canadians safe online. And funnily enough, real close to when Alberta wants its independence.
One of the tools that law enforcement leaders across Canada, and particularly the Toronto Police Service and the Toronto Police Association, have been asking for is lawful access as a tool that will enable them to ensure.
Police have been asking for this. Citizens have been protesting against this.
Public safety. We know that over the last 3 decades, law enforcement has been hamstrung in their ability to investigate.
Pause it again. Sorry. Why have they been hamstrung? They have all the laws on the books. They're refusing to actually implement the laws. And when they do implement the laws, they're not giving out harsh sentences. Rapists, murderers, everything else, it's catch and release at this point. You have the laws, everything's there. Now you're telling me you need to fully track me, fully censor me because that's what's preventing you? That's not what's preventing you at this point.
As we know that technology has evolved. This is no longer the time when we are carrying pagers or even antiquated cell phones. We are in an era where we have smartphones. With our phones, we have so much information that's available to us. Every desktop computer and every technology out there have significant abilities, not just to communicate, but also to deter those who use crime as a tool.
He has no ability to communicate at this point.
To be able to conceal information that will be critically important for law enforcement. Our laws are stuck in a century while technology has essentially moved forward. Right now,
law
the criminals...
enforcement is very advanced technology-wise. They don't need to have this kind of control over the population. You have a right to privacy. And this was a fundamental principle in Western society for a long time. We've now been feminized and the population is now voting for security rather than freedom. And this is why they love the female vote and the immigrant vote. They're always going to vote for security over freedom. Young males and people that are freedom oriented are going to vote for freedom and liberty.
Are profiting from these gaps in law enforcement. They use many of the same digital tools that are in our pockets or on our desk, but they use them for money laundering.
We got one more story and then we'll read the comments.
I think that one has to be on RUMBLE as well.
Okay, well, we have actually quite a few stories for RUMBLE.
Yes.
So if you are going to go over there, now's a good day to kind of go over. Good time. Sometimes we only have 2 or 3 stories. I think today we have 5 or 6.
Yes, but I'll read your comments before we go over there. Sean says, I've been assaulted by homeless people 3 separate times, hit in the face, attacked with a hammer. Oregon is crazy. And then Oregon Oregon. Oregon is very similar to Vancouver.
Yeah, 100%. I've been insulted as well. And my back's out now. I'm not as big as the guys I used to be, but I used to be very intimidating. The fact that somebody would hit me in the face like that, it's because they were mentally ill. When I ran one guy down, gave him a beating and handed him over to the cops said, oh, he had just assaulted 7 other people, hit him in the face and then try to run. This is commonplace now. It's because they're mentally ill.
Beekeeper says, Pierre isn't the answer either. Canada is run by 3 area codes in Toronto and Montreal. Canada is so screwed. And exactly. And that's why we don't care going hard against Pierre and talking about the actual reality of what we're seeing, because the only answer is Alberta independence. Maybe that'll wake some other Canadians up, but I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if Alberta doesn't vote for independence at this point, Albertans are going to leave en masse, at least the ones that were smart enough to vote yes.
Yeah. Joe Rush says, I don't walk at night and I'm a martial artist. I'm afraid of being charged for defending myself. Yeah. Exactly. Also says, YouTube keeps blocking my comments. They don't like LOL. Censorship is crazy. And that's why we have we'll simulcasting on RUMBLE. Any comment that gets censored here, you can put over there and we'll read it as well. Sean says, Joe, I like your comments. Joe says, depopulation. Yeah, depopulization. But yeah, depopulation. And that's what Canada's been doing the rest of the world as well for the longest time. And they don't want the solution that is very easy, which is get the opportunities for young people to have children.
Well, yeah, and they want to disguise it and exasperate the problem with immigrants into the countries. Oh, we have too much population. It's not actually a depopulation problem. And then the immigration also helps hide a lot of the solutions.
Joe Rush says, I'm just trying to figure out what words YouTube doesn't like.
Oh,
so he's trying to see what gets censored. Yeah, we do ban, we are all for free speech, but we do ban emojis and links. Any comments that have a link or an emoji within it, it'll be blocked, because we used to get a lot of spam with emojis and links, just comment after comment after comment. It became impossible. Sean says, Joe, it doesn't like my comments either. All I said was Vancouver didn't deserve the Grizzlies and they are better off in Memphis. I don't get it.
Yeah, that was a horrible team. And then they got Big Country Reeves at that one point. Who were you recruiting?
I have no idea what you're talking
it was
about.
a fat center guy that was just a joke.
Okay. Terry Murray says, I think you guys are right. He just embarrassed himself in front of Trump. Maybe Trump's right about him. And for some reason, Terry was able to send an emoji, but
I hope
slip by, I guess.
Well, we're one of the few channels that went hard on Poilievre, and I hope the rest of Canada wakes up once Carney gets a majority government, because if they don't, they're really just twiddling their thumbs for the next 3 years while they watch the destruction of Canada. Where if they stand up, at least conservatives in Canada stand up once Carney gets that majority, they can say Alberta independence is literally the only way, the only hope, the only way forward.
Mm-hmm. The only way, period.
But the fact, yeah. I want to see what conservatives have to say about Alberta independence when there's the full court press put on by the federal government and they have a majority government and there's no election in sight. If they don't come around to Alberta independence, I have no respect for any political commentator in Canada.
Yeah. Joe Rush says, thank you, Sean, and thank you, Nat and Guy, for all you do. Much respect. And thank you, Joe Rush, because you've also contributed a lot to the conversation.
Yeah, and thank you for everybody that got us to 2,000 subscribers. We hit that today. That was a big milestone for us.
Hopefully we're still there, because I'm sure some people didn't like our opinion. Sean says, Joe, ditto, my friend. Oh, that's so cute. Become friends.
Okay, don't make it gay.
Morris 007 says, excellent stream. Thank you. Says, thanks, Nat and Guy. Congrats again on 2,000 subs. And thank you so much. Also, thank you so much to Sean that helped us kind of get over the hump there. But thank you to everybody that has commented. Again, we are going over to RUMBLE. We do have way more stories there today than we usually do that YouTube just won't like and would censor. So we'd rather just do them there.
And there's a couple international stories as well. Yeah. That's I usually put them on Rumble if we are.
My shoulder. And our username for RUMBLE is down there. It's the same one, Nat and the Guy. We'll see you over there in like 20 seconds.